All right. Last but not least, let's start getting nerdy with some Trek.
Yeah. This is going to be another hour-long conversation.
It might be.
I got to go to work pretty soon. It can't be that long.
All right. So Picard, episode 1, the season premiere of the much anticipated.
You realize we're like a week behind. When this comes out, episode 2 is going to be up.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah, but who cares? Because the people listening to it, they'll be like, "Oh, I've already seen the episode. I want to hear what these guys have to say."
All right, that's true.
And the people who haven't seen it yet are going to be like, "Spoiler alert."
Oh, no, I'm not. I don't care about spoilers.
Neither do I. If anybody listens to this podcast
been a week, guys.
cares about spoilers, like I don't know, nobody cares about spoilers anymore. It was all right. I thought it was okay. I liked seeing Sir Patrick Stewart back. The setup for the show and the premise of it is intriguing. I like that they're bringing this whole this Data coming back from the dead kind of a thing element going with his daughter. It was all right. It got me interested in what the story is going to be. It wasn't perfect. There were some odd moments. I think we were talking about earlier with the young girl Daj. She was. I felt like it, not necessarily the writing of the dialogue, but just her delivery of it seemed a little stiff. So I don't know if she's like a new actress or something like that, but I was kind of like, she definitely wasn't as polished as somebody like Sir Patrick Stewart. So I think that's why it was so noticeable. But I really liked, so the biggest thing that I liked about this was in one episode, they had to catch us up on 20 years of what had happened, why Picard was in the situation that he was in. And instead of doing some kind of weird dialogue dump between him and somebody that he was friends with, they set up this whole interview thing where the Fox News Network comes to his house and does an interview with Picard.
Federation
News.
FNN.
FNN. They came to his house and they did an interview as part of an homage to his. It was 10-year anniversary of or 20-year anniversary or something.
20-year anniversary of the supernova.
So I felt like that.
So old.
I felt like that was a clever way of catching the audience up on what had happened and what the show was going to be about. I enjoyed that aspect of it, and I liked how the reporter was just a total piece of shit and reneged on their deal.
Oh, I got you, old man.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, they're really going for this whole negative reporter aspect thing. I thought that was pretty funny.
That whole scene was probably the best scene in the episode.
Yeah, because
that felt like the most vintage Picard, where she's like, she's like, Romulan lives, and he's like, no,
just lives. Yeah,
that's vintage Picard.
At least it served its purpose and got us caught up on what was supposed to be going on, and
even though none of it made sense.
Here we go, Poopy Pants McGrath over here. Why don't you describe what your feelings are on this episode as quickly as you can?
Yes, Lord Incel. Tell us what's going
King
on.
Incel.
King Incel.
Get it right, peasant.
Okay.
I enjoyed the episode. All the stuff with Picard on screen was pretty solid. It's just nice seeing Patrick Stewart playing the character again.
For sure.
But I felt like everything with Daj was just a mess, and none of it made sense. The writing, you could tell that this thing was reshot to crap 12 times over, simply because the writing for the show is so uneven. And you can tell that a lot of the people writing for this didn't seem to understand Star Trek or science or basic physics.
The power of math, people.
Yeah. I mean, the whole carryover stuff from the J.J. Abrams decisions from the movies, that stuff didn't make any inherent sense. So of course,
just this, you're talking about the supernova happening suddenly.
Yeah, like supernovas don't just happen.
Yeah.
Well, this supernova didn't just happen either. They knew it was coming. That's why they had time to build a fleet.
But they had a yellow sun. Typically, supernovas happen over the course of billions of years, and they happen when a red giant, explodes.
But TV show.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have a show.
well, hold on a sec, because Star Trek has always been, kind of almost hard science fiction in the sense that the fan base appreciates it handling scientific matters very realistically.
This is true.
Yeah, and so when J.J. Abrams took over, we know J.J. Abrams, he's like, fuck that shit, and he's just like, I'm going to do what I want to do, even though it doesn't make any sense. So you're basically insulting the hardcore Star Trek fan base.
I don't know
by ignoring science.
I mean, they've always been loosely based on some actual scientific theories and things for sure.
There are basic writing tools that you can utilize to make this make sense. Like you could say, we don't know why the Romulan star, which is a yellow giant, suddenly went supernova. We'll probably never know, but it did. It was a weird thing that happened.
We still might get that, though. That was my point when we were talking online. I'm like, there was only one episode.
I'm not dealing with what we might get because I have no... I mean, like, if you look at Discovery, they did the same crap where they just completely ignored science. So I'm just dealing with what we did get.
I think Star Trek fans in particular have a hard time dealing with stuff like this because they want to have an answer for everything.
Leaving all that aside, though, leaving all the science inconsistencies aside, okay? There were two things about this episode that just drove me up the wall. The first was that it seems to negate the primary theme of Star Trek, which is a hopeful vision of humanity, where they basically relegate the Federation into like this xenophobic organization that is closed off and doesn't want to help people and kind of abandoning the mission of, the betterment of all species. I mean, it's kind of like the United Nations suddenly saying like, we don't like any other countries, like it just doesn't make sense because the Federation is made up of so many different species that the idea that it suddenly becomes xenophobic doesn't make any sense. And they've made peace with other enemies in the past. So why is there all this prejudice against the Romulans? Like none of that made sense to me.
I really don't have an issue with that for the most part because Trek. This isn't the first time Star Trek has dabbled with that theme. Star Trek 6: The Undiscovered Country, the whole opening scene of that was about Starfleet contemplating opening up a dialogue with the Klingons because the same thing happened. Their homeworld or whatever.
You literally had the Federation agreeing to help evacuate the Romulan homeworld, and then because they're attacked by synthetics, they cancel that plan. And so Picard has to go rogue and try to organize this last-minute fleet,
the Dunkirk
brigade, to try to save as many Romulans as they can before this thing goes supernova. And so, like, none of this makes sense, especially from the perspective of a longtime Star Trek fan who has seen the ideals of the Federation. And, like, the whole theme of Star Trek that I think has made it stand the test of time is this hopeful vision of humanity where we can get past prejudices, we can get past pettiness and stuff like that, and look at things from a more pure and optimistic and hopeful standpoint. And I feel like Kurtzman Trek has just chucked that theme out the window.
Because the people who are writing this show are living in this world and are obviously lean in one particular direction politically, and it's what is it they call it, Trump derangement syndrome or something like that, where it's like it's just all encompassing. Everything you do has to have this backhanded slap at President Donald Trump. Like that's just how their mind works. So they are injecting this kind of mentality into these shows, and it's rubbing a lot of people the wrong way because that's not what Star Trek used to be. It used to be pretty. I mean, they did dabble in a lot of situations, like Matt mentioned. Like there's always Star Trek. Go ahead.
I literally just watched an episode of DS9 2 days ago, and I don't remember. It's first or second season, and it was the first episode of the Maquis arc. Okay. And Sisko literally has a speech where he says, the Federation back on Earth, they live in this world where there's no poverty, there's no need for money, everything's perfect. But that's not the real world. That's not how people outside of planet Earth live. And, and to me, the whole concept of the Federation and their perfect little world, I think that needs to be dabbled with and tweaked sometimes, needs to be looked at in some different ways. So I don't really have a problem with this approach. Picard or Patrick Stewart's this is our answer to Brexit and to Trump derangement syndrome and all this kind of stuff. It doesn't bug me a whole lot because I feel like this is just an ongoing theme that's been touched on before, and it's going to be touched on again. It's just like nothing's perfect, and the weird socialist everybody's kumbaya world of Star Trek, the Roddenberry world. It's a nice pipe dream. It's not real.
Well, that was
I don't think it's ever going to be real.
was kind of
because
the point of it, though, right?
human beings are human beings,
Yeah.
and
the idea of it is that we rose above that mentality, and we're like, no, we're better than that, and we're going to strive to be better than that.
I mean, the whole first episode of The Next Generation, it was the trial of humanity, and if you listen to Picard's defense in that, like that encapsulates what Star Trek is supposed to be.
Yeah,
but more so than just abandoning the theme outright, it was just the bad writing in this episode. like everything when it came to Daj was just terribly done.
It was very
from a structural perspective, from a dialogue perspective. Like when she shows up at Picard's vineyard and she's like, I just killed 4 people, and he's like, have some tea.
Security.
Yeah, I mean, like she comes off like a homeless crazy person
at the front door,
talking about like how like lightning's seeking the ground and stuff. And Picard's first instinct, because the plot tells him she's okay, is, hey, why don't you stay here?
It was number 1. His dog was like, if number 1 didn't like you, then I'd kick you out.
Yeah. I mean, that was the justification they used, but like every time she had a conversation with Picard, she made absolutely no sense whatsoever. And just okay. So I know that we don't have time to get into this, but
we're going to do it anyway.
There's this thing called narrative congruence, or
are we going to school now?
Like
yes.
Okay. Kadish's School of Script Writing. Here we go.
So there's this thing called narrative continuity, in the sense that you have 3 different types of continuity that audiences are filtering a TV show or movie through constantly, and that's external genre and internal continuity. And so, the external continuity is about how we know real life works, which is why, like, a star going supernova just out of the blue doesn't make any sense, because we know that in actual science there's this billion-year process for that to happen. Then there's the genre continuity, where it's like staples of the genre that we've come to accept. Like Star Trek is its own genre now, so it's like warp drive. Okay, we get that. Positronic neurons. Okay, we get that. And
made up science stuff.
Well, some of us get that.
And then there's internal continuity, which is just the internal logic of the story itself. And so whenever we watch something, whether we know it or not, we put it through these 3 different filters and it's basically these 3 filters combine to create the narrative logic of the story that we're watching. And when that logic is violated in some way, shape, or form, our suspension of disbelief halts and we're taken out of the movie or the story that we're watching. And so if you look at what happens with Daj, so she's attacked by 3 men in her apartment who end up killing her boyfriend, and all of a sudden she's on the run. But if you think about it from a logical perspective, it's like, what would you do if you were just attacked in your home and you defeated the attackers and someone you love died? You would call the police, right? You wouldn't suddenly go on the lam thinking that you're being hunted. You would think it was just a random incident.
If she was a normal person, yes, but she had that awakening moment, that click
where
her programming told her to go find Picard. So I think it was less of like, oh, I need to do this because this is what you're socially normal is.
You're assuming that the programming told her to find Picard. She just had a vision of him. She didn't know what his name was.
She said it, though. She said, for whatever reason, I needed to come and find you. Like, that was part of the dialogue.
Once she saw him on TV, yes, that became true. But before that, she didn't know who he was. She just had this vision of him. But the whole idea that, you would think that the first thing she would do, if she did feel she was in danger and she had to go on the lam, would be to call her parents. And that scene came after she went and found Picard, accepted his safety, his offer of safety, and then ran away from it. Like from a narrative standpoint, like she goes, she finds him, he takes her in, she leaves, and then she comes back, and it makes no sense from a narrative writing perspective. Usually the way these things work is, the correct way that this should have worked from a writing perspective was that she goes, she seeks out Picard.
I love it when you do this.
Yeah,
this is awesome.
She seeks out Picard. Picard refuses her. He thinks she's crazy. Then in the process of refusing her, something happens that changes his mind. Like maybe she gets attacked at the vineyard. And so he realizes she's in danger and he wants to help her, but now she's on the run. And so he has to go seek her out because he feels guilty for rejecting her. And then he eventually catches up with her, in San Francisco or whatever, and convinces her that he wants to help her. And so like that is narratively from a writing perspective.
So here's my question. So Matt just fixed the whole script in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Why are these people that are being paid to write this show and produce this show, Why can't they figure this out?
Well, you mentioned it felt like it was reshot.
Yeah, I think what happened is they originally had it a certain way.
Maybe
like for instance, that fight on the rooftop towards the end, they had to have that in there because that was their big set piece. Mm-hmm. So when they had to go back and do reshoots, they had to figure out a way to keep that in there, but still, lead up to it in a way that somewhat made sense.
Yeah.
And like I told you guys, like if you're not thinking about this stuff too hard, especially from a narrative perspective, the show probably flows just fine.
Yeah.
But this is stuff that to me, like when I'm watching it, it completely takes me out of the story because it's just so poorly done from a craft perspective.
But you're special.
No,
No, I'm serious. He can't help but look at a show like this and not let his brain pick it apart.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I got to do that on the second viewing because the first viewing I watched this show, I liked it. Mm-hmm. It was great. I had a good time with it. I go, all right, we got some cool Star Trek again. The second time through, it's like I lowered my score a little bit because the stuff with Dodge was kind of clunky and it didn't make a lot of sense. But most people out there don't have Kadish's brain.
Yeah.
And they're not going to care about why can she jump 50 yards or what's a positronic neuron. The hardcore Trekkies are going to not like that stuff. They're going or they will maybe. I don't know. But there's way more people that's watching this show than just
digest it and move on. Yeah.
So but yeah, I get what you're saying.
I mean, it comes totally down to the Kurtzman era, just lack of talent in the writer's room. Mm-hmm. Like we saw it with 2 seasons of Discovery where, like as soon as I turned off my critical brain, I was like, this is going to be stupid. So I'm just going to sit back and watch it and take what comes. Like I enjoyed it a lot more because I knew how bad it was. And with Picard, like I said, on my first viewing, I enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. I knew there were problems with it, but like I wasn't too critical. And upon further viewing, the flaws in this just popped out at me. And it really comes down to the chaos that has been going on in the Kurtzman writers' rooms for these series. And I feel like he's Kathleen Kennedy light in that sense, where he just doesn't know how to put together a good group of writers to tell a good story. And especially like when I got CBS All Access to watch Picard, I also started watching this other show on CBS All Access called Evil, which is by the creators of The Good Wife and Brain Dead, which was a fantastic show. And it's also got Rockne S. O'Bannon, who did Farscape, involved in it. And that show, compared to Picard in terms of writing, is like night and day, because the writing on Evil was so good and so well done that, it just made me even more critical of Picard because, I had something to contrast it up against on the exact same network.
Yeah.
So I just feel like we're going to get more of the bad writing on Picard coming down the line, but the nostalgia and Patrick Stewart kind of saves it.
Yeah.
It's quite possible.
I was like, there was definitely some nostalgia bugs going on in my brain. And, I try not to judge series on first episodes, unlike, Avenue 5, which I was like, eh. But, there's not a single piece of Star Trek out there that I haven't seen. I'm not going to not watch this show. Mm-hmm. This, they've got me, whether they want me or not. And good or bad, just like Discovery. Terrible show. I'm still going to watch every episode.
They've got you whether you want to or not.
Yeah, they do. That's very true. But I'm looking forward to what we do. I want to see the callbacks. I want to see, before this run is done, I want to see cameos at least by everybody that's in that old show. I want to see Crusher. Right. I want to see LaForge. I want to see people that are on the other shows. I want to see Dax or Odo's dead now, but let's make it a fun Star Trek. Make it a show for us guys that grew up in the 80s and the 90s that watched Star Trek back then. Give us our show.
I think it definitely has potential. I hope, like, Kadish makes some solid points, of course, as he always does. I hope that they tighten the belt a little bit and get their game on and write something that's really, really fun. But because they have the DNA, they have the ingredients that they need to make this amazing.
And it's like I hear a lot of people saying, it's like, well, it doesn't look like Star Trek. It's like,
it's 20 years later.
20 years later.
Yeah.
That's what the Orville's for.
That doesn't bother me.
If you want cardboard sets and doors that are opening by guys in the walls and shit, watch the Orville. And that's a great show too. I love the Orville.
Yeah.
But this is new era Star Trek, and You know, I like that they've upped their production value a little bit, even if the scripts aren't that great yet.
Yeah, the whole thing was shot in widescreen too.
Yeah,
it looked good.
It's a pretty show.
Today's going to be a good day. We're going to talk about some cool nerd stuff.
It'll be titillating.
We're getting X-rated now. That's awesome.
You're just going to spend the whole podcast trying to make Matt uncomfortable. Boobs. I left that in last week just for you, buddy. Boobs. All right, let's start with Picard, episode 2, the answer of questions episode. So we had all these questions from last week, and we kind of got a couple answers about the synthetic uprising, which was apparently just one droid.
No.
It wasn't just one droid?
No.
Were they flying the ships too?
We just saw the one droid.
Yeah.
But it was all the droids.
First off, you see a room full of like 50 of them, which was just in that one little section of the...
Yeah. So obviously they have an army of these things.
Yeah.
And they're like data lights.
They were datalets. Yeah.
Dataling.
Dataling, yeah.
And
so did you notice the eyeballs?
yeah, they got hacked.
They got hacked.
Yeah. So I'm assuming it would be by the Romulans?
Well,
I don't know who would. I guess
that's
no.
That's
you know
a big
what?
mystery, right?
I guess so, because one of the things that the admiral or commodore or whoever it was said was that they the reason, and we'll discuss this too. The reason why Starfleet bailed on the Romulan like rescue mission was because like 14 different species were like super against it, and they didn't want to save them, and they were going to be like, we're going to leave Starfleet if you continue this absurd mission. And I'm thinking that maybe one of those 14 were the ones who sabotaged the rescue mission by blowing up Mars.
Or it could have been the Borg.
The Borg? You think the Borg are... Because they're kind of dormant, though. And that's this whole thing with the Borg Cube has got me super confused.
Well, the whole reason that the Borg is in the show so far, I think, is to justify that, you know...
Computer hacking?
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. That whole section really confused me. I had no idea what they were going for.
I don't think we're even supposed to know the answers yet, because it's only episode 2 of the pilot, essentially. Like, 3-part pilot.
But you brought up something interesting, and I'm a super huge fan of Voyager. I watch it over and over again forever. It's just constantly on repeat. And you mentioned something about how there were no Borg cubes that came through Voyager. You know, went through that portal when I got home. There was a Borg sphere, but that
I watched a YouTube video. It was one of those 10 things you might have missed or whatever, and 10 cool things about Picard episode 2. And one of the things they said was that this Borg cube was the cube that followed Voyager back in the series finale. And I instantly thought to myself, I go, that's not right. So I actually went and watched that episode again. Yeah. And it was a sphere that came through, and it got demolished the instant it came out of the...
Yeah, because Starfleet knew they were coming, and they like launched like 1,000 ships in that direction, right?
Voyager blew it up from inside.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought there was a bunch of...
I don't remember, but it blew up, and then Voyager came out.
Oh, okay. I have this vision in my head of the end of Voyager where they come through the portal and like Starfleet's there to like...
But I watched... I think what's that stupid show with Idiot Wheaton that he hosts?
The Ready Room?
The Ready Room, and they... I think they said that this cube is actually in Romulan space.
Yeah.
Which...
Well, that's why the Romulans have it, right?
Yeah. So there's really nothing that we've seen in the shows prior to this that explains where that cube comes from.
Well, they call it an artifact because apparently, or relic, because it got disconnected from the Borg collective, and now it's just kind of like, what do you call it, derelict.
Yeah.
And my guess is that, so in this episode, we got introduced into the Vashaga, whatever, like...
Yeah, sure.
The Romulan secret police.
Oh, yeah.
The secret police.
The super secret. The double secret police.
This is the Tal Shiar, which are the secret police.
Yeah.
Don't even really know much about these guys.
Yeah. So like, and it's inferred that the Romulans have this like kind of section within them that is very distrustful of technology. And so what this could be signaling is that the Romulans, long before the Federation ever ran into the Borg, had a battle with this Borg cube or whatever, and somehow defeated it. And because of the Borg threat, they instantly became very suspicious of all androids and stuff like that. And so this is something that is not in canon but happened long ago and is the genesis of this secret police that hates synthetics. And so their reclamation of the Borg derelict ship is basically them trying to study how to defeat this enemy and things of that nature. So that's just me spitballing. That's what I can gather from what they've shared with us so far. I don't think there's been any setup for it in previous series or anything like that.
That actually makes sense. I don't mind that explanation if that's actually what happens. That sounds pretty good to me.
I do know that the Borg part of the Alpha Quadrant is they border Borg space.
On the Romulan side?
If there was going to be a Borg incursion, it would happen there first.
Oh, okay.
So
that's good. Good job,
according
guys.
to the Nerd Encyclopedia.
Good canon junkies. I love that. That's good stuff. Good information. Okay, so let's discuss the Starfleet debacle, bailing on the Romulan rescue mission. This explanation that we get in this episode, like I kind of mentioned before, a certain subset of Starfleet itself was totally against it, although they did support it at first. The continued operation, I think they mentioned that it was just too many resources going towards this mission, and some of the bad blood left over with the Romulans and several other species. They didn't like the idea of going forward with that, with rescuing them. So they had a choice to make: either let Starfleet dismantle itself because of this one, rescuing this enemy of Starfleet and doing the right thing, as Picard rightly said, but allowing Starfleet to fall apart. And that was the choice that they had to make. And it was kind of just between a rock and a hard place. I, for one, really enjoyed that explanation of it. And to me, it made sense. I have a feeling like one of you guys might disagree with me. Kadish, what do you think about that explanation?
I thought it was pretty weak. I appreciate that they put it in there to try to justify, this very stupid plot point that they've introduced into the show. But, Matt can probably back me up on this. The Romulans have their own empire. It's multiple planets, huge fleet of ships.
Yeah.
So the idea that they couldn't evacuate their own planet on their own is kind of iffy to begin with. Mm-hmm. But the fact that Starfleet, would kind of give into that pressure because they've done unpopular things before, especially in the name of peace, because helping the Romulans would have brought them into the fold. They could have said okay, we'll help you, but you need to do these diplomatic concessions and stuff like that. Because Starfleet's always been about diplomacy. So the idea that 14 member planets would be oh, screw you guys if you help the Romulans, that doesn't really sit with me, because they'd be, you'd think that they'd want to, somehow eliminate this threat by bringing them in diplomatically and making them play nice for a change. Mm-hmm. So I can appreciate that they tried to offer an explanation for it. I just didn't think it was a great explanation, especially considering the fact that, you had this character who's now a Grand Admiral, or no. This was the lady that Picard went to go see.
Yeah, she was just an admiral.
Oh, she was an admiral.
And funny enough, her character was a helmsman on the Enterprise in one of the original first seasons.
That is pretty cool. Yeah. That's a nice little callback.
Yeah, I like those kind of.
But she sits there and when Picard kind of gives her his pitch, she's just the sheer effing hubris.
Yeah. So let's talk about that elephant in the room. Go ahead, finish
my point. So the whole thing just kind of seemed really hackneyed. I hate to say it, but Akiva Goldsman, he's a terrible writer. Even though he won an Oscar, he's a terrible writer. This is the guy who did Batman and Robin, if you want some type of reference for how good of a writer he is.
The nipples.
And it just feels like the worst part about this episode for me was just the sheer level of lazy exposition that got dumped on us from the very first minute of it. And and I like to say that when people have to resort to throwing in F-bombs just when they're not warranted, it's just a sign that it's lazy writing, because they can't be bothered to think of a more creative way to express that emotion or that. I
think that's true of Tarantino, though, because he throws F-bombs everywhere.
Well, that's a Tarantino movie.
Tarantino uses it differently. But if you look at Star Trek, we have 50 years of precedence here. And I remember when Generations came out and Data said shit, Like that was a big moment, but it was appropriate
because he was confused. Yeah, he was trying to be.
But it was also funny, and it was like he said it at the right moment, and it had a great impact because you'd never heard a curse word in Star Trek before, and so like that I feel was done correctly. But both Discovery and Star Trek Picard have now been dropping F-bombs, and they've been doing them in the most slipshod, lazy way possible, where like they don't even fit in the moments where they're used.
I mean, swear words just don't belong in Star Trek. Star Trek is supposed to be a family-friendly show, number one. They've actually explained it in Star Trek 4 that people don't swear anymore.
Oh, and the new
the double dumbass thing on you. Remember, it was like, we just don't know how to swear anymore because we just don't find a need for it.
Yeah.
I mean, Kirk's like, swearing? What's this? This is strange, It's just they've evolved past the need to swear.
For expletives? Is that what they're called? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to really explain it.
Like it might have been
but
justified in Discovery's timeline because that was before the original series, but by the time we get to Picard and the Next Generation, like you'd think that was
things would get better, not worse.
Yeah, you'd think that they'd have moved past that by now.
I don't know. Let's get your opinion on the explanation for Starfleet bailing on Romulans, and then we'll talk about the swearing a little bit more.
I don't have a huge take on it. I think.
Did it work for you?
No, not really. I think they're trying to just set up some kind of thing where they're trying to.
Can I take a gamble at this?
Oh, sure. Please.
I think what he's trying to say is that's dumb.
Does that sound about right?
No. No, it's fine. They've always kind of paralleled the political climate of the day that they're made. I think they're just trying to. There's probably some parallels that you can set up for the Romulans with. There's supposed to be somebody today, and and the Borg are probably supposed to parallel some stuff, but I don't know. Maybe they're just not doing a very good job of it.
Star Trek writers not doing a good job.
It's very confusing.
That never happens.
I don't know, man.
I think it's just kind of emblematic of the Kurtzman era of Star Trek, where ever since Discovery kind of premiered, we've had this new generation of Star Trek writers. And it used to be that the writers on Star Trek were either legitimate science fiction writers, or they were people who were kind of brought up through the ranks of the show itself. And so like they had a great deal of respect for the show and the characters. And, you saw that going pretty much all the way up to Voyager. And then for Enterprise, I think they brought in like a different set of writers, and we saw how that show turned out. But with this one, like it really is the Kurtzman, Bad Robot, J.J. Abrams kind of stable of writers who were coming in and doing this stuff. Yeah. And they are just of a different caliber of writing talent in the sense that they're nowhere close to what we used to get.
Different level of suck.
Yeah, exactly. And so like they're trying their hardest. I know that the guy who was the showrunner on Picard, Michael Chabon, he's like one of the great American novelists. Like he's a fantastic writer. But for whatever reason, so far I haven't been impressed with this show because, I mean, just in this episode alone, the first two scenes where we've got Picard and his, I guess, retired super secret assassin maid start doing their detective thing, and you've got this weird.
That was hard to watch.
Yeah,
the first 20 minutes of this episode was like
super technobabble.
So weird.
Well, it was also weird in the sense that like they kept cross-cutting between scenes, and it was like you have a scene that happened and then a scene that happened in the past, and then they kept cross-cutting between them.
But they were having the same conversation.
They were having the exact same conversation.
So weird.
And they were basically repeating themselves, but doing so in the dumbest possible way, because basically they were doing these exposition dumps that were just for the audience's benefit. Because like if you look at the scene where they show up at Daj's apartment, Picard is like, she starts doing this weird quantum
rewind thing where you can see the past.
She had a fancy tricorder.
Yeah,
Matt,
she had a fancy tricorder. But Picard tells her something that she obviously knows, and he obviously knows that she would know this, but he's saying it because the audience needs to know it. And so he's like, oh, you know that it's illegal to do blah, blah, blah in Federation space. And she's like, yes, I know it's illegal to do blah, blah, blah in Federation space. You have bad writing on full display in the sense that, normally you'd want to have this stuff come out in a more organic way through dialogue where you understand both these characters would already know this, and so you'd have to communicate it in a more intelligent way. But instead, they just went the lazy route. And I think that's Picard's biggest problem as a show so far, is just that it's lazy writing, where they just put it out there for the audience and then move on, despite not respecting the characters.
Instead of using the tricorder for an example, they use it as a crutch to move the story forward instead of as a piece of the.
But it was also incredibly convoluted.
Yeah, the dialogue.
It was very confusing.
Mixed with the stuff. It was just
a bit much.
Too much. Yeah, it was terrible.
But like their whole explanation about how the computer could accidentally mistake her twin sister for her, and that's how they're going to get past the Romulan secret police, wiping any trace of evidence away. I had to watch it like 2 or 3 times before I was like, wait a minute, like what did they say?
All right, so let's talk about
the F-bombs.
The F-bombs. I think we're all pretty much in agreement that it doesn't really belong in Trek. Go ahead, Jude.
I have nothing.
You have nothing?
Do you think it's okay to swear in Star Trek?
I don't fucking care.
Thank you. I knew she was going to do that. I knew it. I didn't like it. I didn't like how it was used. I didn't like its placement. I think F-bombs in general are too much for Trek. Like you said before, like Trek's like a family-friendly show. Like I can't watch this show with my kids, and I watch Voyager and Next Generation. It's on the TV all the time. My kids will sit down and watch it, and we don't have to worry about it too much.
It's one of those things where the creators of this show, they're like, oh, we're on a streaming service. We don't have to worry about nudity or bad language or stuff anymore. So let's just put it in there, even though it doesn't fit, because we can do it. You know, like it reeks of that.
Yeah.
And it's just like I don't know if that's like a studio mandate where they're like, hey, why don't you throw in some language and sex so we can give people a reason to want to subscribe to our service or something like that.
That just tells me they don't know the product they have.
Yeah.
That's
it feels
not
off.
what we want. It's not what Trek fans
You know what?
want.
My wife is a super Trekkie, like way more than I am. And when she saw that scene, she got pissed.
Yeah.
She was like, how dare they talk to Picard that way? She was like, oh, they did not just say that to him. That is like, how could they? She was mad, legit mad.
Well, Laris, the Romulan maid, who's also the super secret
Cheeky
spy
fucker.
assassin. Yeah. Well, I mean, she said the F-bomb
Yep.
at the beginning.
It was weird. I saw a clip, I think it was on Twitter, from the official Star Trek Twitter page or whatever, that had that clip, and it had subtitles, and she said cheeky fecker.
Well,
F-R-E-K.
they just put that on there.
In the Amazon, because I subscribe to CBS through Amazon, in the Amazon closed captionings, it said "effer."
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's so weird.
Can we talk about how boring this episode was?
I wanted to try and get some positivity out of this episode. I didn't find it boring. I thought it was definitely heavy on the exposition.
It was a big setup episode for what's to come. Like it, especially after the first episode where they had so much action and stuff going on. This one just kind of felt meh to me.
It's they're still setting stuff up though.
Yeah, it's episode 2.
This is a 3-part pilot.
Can we also talk about like how I can't tell the Romulans apart from the the Vulcans? Like I have no idea.
I disagree with that. I think I can. It's pretty, except for Picard's maid that lives with him. She's the only one that I think they've maybe humanized a little bit too much. But everybody else, I could tell.
Well, when they introduced Commodore O later on in the episode, I legit thought she was a Romulan.
She is undercover.
Well, she's an undercover Romulan who looks just like a Romulan.
No, she looks like a Vulcan. She doesn't have the head ridges.
She doesn't look like a Vulcan to me. Like, she didn't act like a Vulcan. Like, I had no idea what her species was. And it was funny because when I first watched the first episode, I thought that Picard's 2 helpers were Vulcans. I was like, wait a minute, they're not acting like Vulcans. So I just get so confused because there's no, like, at least in the Next Generation, like, all the Romulans had, like, bowl cuts and stuff.
Yeah.
Like you knew the difference between them and Vulcans. And here, I'm just like, who are these species again? Like, I can't tell them apart.
It can get difficult with a couple of the characters, but the one that I disagree with is the Commodore. I think it was fine. It made sense because of the plot device afterwards that they're undercover. Like, yeah, she seemed to me like she was acting like she was pretending to be Vulcan. Like she was trying real hard not to get like upset, but her tone was kind of giving it away for the audience to realize, like, something's not quite right with this lady. I don't know why the rest of Starfleet doesn't realize that, but she's just...
I mean, it's like the laziest undercover job ever.
It really is. Yeah, it was fun. I like the human one, though. The human lady that was undercover Vulcan, or undercover Romulan. I thought that was pretty cool. And this whole plot that they're trying to, like, take over Starfleet. You think it's because Starfleet bailed on them, they're trying to, like, come in?
I don't know if they're trying
to
take over.
Yeah.
I think they just have
an agenda.
People in a strategic places that have been there for a very long time.
Yeah, some serious high rankers.
I mean, Commodore O is supposedly been in Starfleet for probably 30 years. So she's had a long assignment.
Yeah.
You know, you don't just become a Commodore. You
have to
start
work
at
your
the
way
bottom
up.
and work your way up over a career.
And, an alternative to this is that, they're not undercover Romulans. They're actually a part of Starfleet that, has their own agenda, like almost like a Section 31 type, like, sleeper cell type thing. Because, I mean, there was no direct connection to the Romulans. Like, they're running an operation on the Romulan Borg Cube. But we haven't gotten any information that they're actually, a Romulan, sleeper cell, basically.
Yeah.
So we still have a lot of questions left to be answered.
Yeah, I could say some stuff, but I'm gonna not comment.
There was okay. I'm gonna say something that I liked about this episode. The ending scene with Picard and this new character that he goes to seek for help. That was an awesome scene to me. I laughed. I was like, get out of here. I don't want to see you. She's holding a gun to him. He turns around and says, the Romulans are plotting to take over Starfleet. She's like, what kind of wine do you have? I thought that was a great moment. It just because we're just now being introduced to this character, it felt like they had a history. And I really enjoyed that about that. And I enjoyed that little scene, that little interaction. So
that was something that was kind of set up in the supplemental material that nobody looked at. But there's the 3-part comic book. That's just like people never read. Sets her up, so you know who she is. She was his first officer. On the Verity. The ship is called the Verity during the whole Romulan escape plan thing. And she was Starfleet's like #1 Romulan expert. So she's way into Romulan culture and society and everything. And they had some kind of falling out, of course, which wasn't in the comic book. But
I'm sure it'll
And that also sets up Laris and her husband, who they are in relationship to Picard, and why they're with him. But I'm not going to get into that because it doesn't matter.
That's a deep cut.
But
Jude's crying out of boredom.
I know. It's like, I want to talk about stuff I
live
know
for
about.
this.
All right. That's enough out of Picard. Final thoughts. Did you enjoy this episode? Yes or no?
Nah, I don't have a judgment on it yet. Okay. I want to see all 3 episodes of the pilot first.
Okay. I enjoyed it. It had some good moments and it had some bananas. It's
just more, hey, here's a new character and here's a little bit more of what the story is going to be about this season.
Here's some F-bombs.
Here's an F-bomb for you.
Yeah.
That's the only one.
Here's a magic tricorder.
I know it won't be, but I really hope that's the only one. Matt, did you enjoy this episode? Yes or no?
Yeah, I was underwhelmed.
Okay. All right, cool.
I didn't hate it, but I definitely didn't enjoy it.
All right. Next on our topic list is we're going to get salty about Star Trek Picard because the more we get into this TV show, the
worse it gets.
The worse it gets, and the less like Star Trek it gets. It feels totally different.
Yeah. Star Trek snuff film.
Well, yeah.
Danny, why don't you take this away? You seem to be pretty distraught, so roll with it, man.
Well, I don't even know where to start. So,
before we get into this, though, we're all big Star Trek fans. We love Star Trek.
Yeah. Voyager is my calling card for Star Trek. I'm sure most of you guys.
Next Gen was mine.
Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, probably.
Yep.
Yeah. But being a Voyager fan, 7 of 9, Icheb, all the Borg stuff that happened with Janeway, like that's all. I know that like the back of my hand. I watch that show all the time.
So just know that before we start tearing into this thing.
Yeah, I'm a huge little background. Like my. Instead of Saturday morning cartoons, my mom was a huge Star Trek, the original series fan.
Okay,
and she had all of those VHS tapes, and we would watch. Like I'd watch them all the time. So that was like my.
Me and
my
Danny actually met at a Star Trek convention.
And then, of course, when Next Gen came out, I was like, I think 7 or 8 or something like that, and watched those religiously. Then, of course, I watched, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and the cool thing, it was always something I could watch with my family. So, my mom would watch it with me when I was younger, and then my oldest son, who's 21 now, we watched Voyager together as it came out, like on a weekly basis. We even watched, Enterprise together, which was. Which he loved, so that's all that matters to me. Anything I can watch Enterprise with my kids, but it got good at the last season.
I worked at Paramount Studios as they were shooting Enterprise, so I had a little behind the scenes look at that show.
But so having said that, this is not a show you can watch with your kids, at all. And the unnecessary overuse of how did Spock put it? Colorful metaphors. There's absolutely no need for it. Like, it doesn't add anything. It just kind of dumbs it down. And like like the last episode, I think they dropped the F-bomb like 3 times. Through a few different characters, and it's like it adds nothing to the story at all. It just it takes away from it, really. It's kind of distracting. It pulls me out. Like, it doesn't feel like Star Trek.
Yeah, every time they drop an F-bomb, you're kind of like, wait, what?
Yeah,
and it totally ruins the scene that you're watching.
I mean, they were supposed to, like, they let, like you were saying earlier about the whiteboard with Trump and everything. They've kind of just stop trying to make a statement, some kind of political statement, and just make a good story. They could do the same storyline they want to do without changing canon. Cause like they were supposed to be so evolved that people were raised, they don't even know what these words are. Yeah. You know what I mean? But now all of a sudden everybody
know what money is.
Now we've got, they don't know what money is yet. You've got, Raffi, showing a little bit of jealousy over Picard's chateau, and things like that. She's apparently a recovering addict. She's vaping,
child abandoner.
There's just like all kinds of it doesn't feel like Star Trek. And I was super excited, and I'm going to watch them all. And I love Patrick Stewart.
The thing that killed me about this latest episode 5, which is what was it? Something City Shuffle Space Vegas.
Right.
The opening scene was so graphically gruesome.
Oh yeah.
Like I was like, if I was sitting down with my child to watch this, like I'd have to cover his eyes or something like that, because even for me, like it was hard to watch, and I'm not really squeamish.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, and I'm not a big Voyager fan, so I didn't know this. That was actually like kind of an important character.
Yeah,
very important
character. And they just like treated him like an afterthought.
Did you see the actual actor who played Icheb in Voyager? It wasn't him.
No.
It was somebody else, and he seems pretty distraught about that. Now I'm not sure what the background information is about why Paramount didn't bring him back for that role. It seems like it would make sense for him.
They didn't bring back the original Bruce Maddox.
That's a different actor as well.
And it just seems, it's like, why not honor that legacy of these characters if you're bringing back 7 of 9 and
because Kurtzman Trek isn't about honoring Star Trek at all.
Yeah, and what did you guys see the comments for the showrunner about all the gruesomeness and the violence? His explanation for it. Did you happen to read it?
Yeah.
It was basically like, hey, there's always been violence in Trek, and the only reason why it hasn't been over the top or overused was because of budgetary constraints and TV regulations, stopping them from going all the way. And now we don't have that holding us back anymore. So we feel like it's necessary for the show to move forward and to show the realness of this universe.
The thing about that is it's not about the violence. It's about the graphic gore that they're showing.
No, I mean, because we're constantly seeing people get blown up next to their stations, sparks flying, and they have their face burnt off.
In this show, you literally saw someone's eye get pulled out of their socket before a drill went into their brain.
Gnarly. That kid, episode 4, decapitating that guy right in front of Picard.
Oh, yeah.
That was... Yeah.
And they did the same thing in Discovery too. The Klingons, when they were like chopping people's heads off and stuff. I'm like, what the heck?
Or eating that captain, like they ate her.
Yeah,
killing babies. Yeah. Even though they're fake.
But the thing that gets me the most is just like the flagrant inconsistencies within the show. For instance, the use of money.
Yeah.
We keep having these characters talk about using money and stuff like that. And everyone's saying like, oh, well, outside of the Federation, maybe there's like a barter system. But in a universe where you literally have unlimited resources through replication, money has no value. And they've pointed this out numerous times within all the previous Star Trek shows. But more than that, the funny thing was in this episode, so remember when Dr. what's her name? The drummer from Scott Pilgrim, the blonde lady.
I think that's a good name, Dr. what's her name?
That's her?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So like
I had no idea.
She's watching a video of her with Bruce Maddox. And Maddox is like he has replicated eggs, flour, butter, sugar, all this stuff.
Chocolate chips. Yeah.
And she's like, why don't you just, replicate chocolate chip cookies? And he's like, well, the replicated chocolate chip cookies don't taste as good when you add, chemistry to, chemical reactions to the replicated ingredients. It comes out tasting just like regular stuff. And it's like, okay, so let me ask you, why is Picard growing grapes on his vineyard? Why can't he just replicate grapes and then make the wine? If you can't replicate wine because it doesn't taste as good as a real thing, why can't you replicate the grapes that make the wine? Why does he need all this land with Mexican workers walking around? Romulans. Sorry,
Romulicans.
Like it's little things like this that
you guys are going to get me so in trouble.
It's little things like this though that just show how little thought was put into the world building of the show.
I think they underestimated the nitpickiness of Trekkies.
Well, I mean, they haven't thought their storyline through, and I'm very disappointed with Michael Chabon on this because he's considered to be one of the greatest living American novelists currently out there, but the way he's handled this show, and I don't know if it's because they had to go back and reshoot a bunch of stuff, but it's just been terrible. And I think it's obvious what they're doing. What they're doing with Picard is they're trying to set up the fall of the Federation. Because when Discovery season 3 comes out, it's all about, the Federation's been long gone. And
there's only 13 planets a part of it now.
Yeah. And so they come into the 1,000 years in the future and they rebuild, what fell apart. And I think that in Kurtzman's mind or the writer's room mind, they're using Picard to kind of set that stage where they're showing that, the Federation is, getting corrupted and it's going to be torn apart throughout, the course of the Picard series. And what we see in Discovery picks up with what happened is the aftermath of that. I think that's very obvious what they're doing. And I just hate it. Yeah. I don't like it at all.
Me too.
And that sounds kind of interesting to me. At least they're thinking that far ahead because they know that they have to set up the reason why the Federation fell in Discovery season 3. So they're using this as kind of like a precursor to that. That specific aspect of it doesn't bother me.
But the worst part about this last episode,
to explore that.
Worst part about this last episode was 7 of 9 made it clear that Picard is a naive idiot. Like she basically flat out said that the whole theme of Star Trek, that humanity has a bright, hopeful future, that humanity can rise above like its pettiness and its violence and its, prejudices and stuff like that, is unrealistic and is something that can never be achieved and is, something that old men cling on to because they don't know any better. And that pissed me off more than anything else that I've seen in this series, is just the fact that this show basically negated the whole premise of what made Star Trek special and unique.
Yeah. No, and that's what's so frustrating to me, because Star Trek was always hopeful, gave you like hope for the future. It's like, and that's why I'm really surprised with Patrick Stewart and like kind of going along with all this, because like he's even famously said several times at different conventions about the police officer from Las Vegas. I'm sure you've heard that story. Oh, you haven't? So he had a fan who's a police officer in Las Vegas who says every time he gets home from work, he puts on an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation to kind of help him decompress from all the bullshit he's gone through throughout the day, because all the horrors and terrible stuff that he sees at his job, because it gives him such a hopeful, vision of the future. And and now they're just taking a big fat shit all over it. And it frustrates me. Like I want to be like, so my daughter's 11 now, and she's a really talented artist, and she's really into space and stuff like that now. And I was talking to her about like, hey, well, we can watch Star Trek together. And she's like, well, Mommy says you're watching this new show Picard. I was like, you cannot watch that. I'm sorry, no. Like, let's start with like Next Generation or something like that. And I really hate that, because that's something like my whole life that Star Trek has been about. It's like, good morality tales. Hope.
The stuff that the Orville's doing.
Yes. Which I gotta love the Orville. Like, when is that coming back out? Oh my god!
Shout out to Scott Grimes. Thanks for that.
Yeah, but if you look at what the Orville does, like they very clearly do those classic Trek like morality conflict things. And the great thing about the Trek kind of structure was always that the crew is in every episode they're presented with this problem, this challenge, or a puzzle of some type, and they have to kind of figure out this puzzle while also staying true to their ideals. Mm-hmm. And that was always the thing that kind of brought tension into the mix. It's like, should we devolve into like a military style war operation, or can we find a diplomatic solution that is in line with what we believe in and the values that we uphold? And that was always, I mean, it takes a lot of thought and good writing to pull those things off. And if you look at the Orville, they're never preachy about it. They don't say this is the right thing to think, this is the wrong thing to think, but they present both sides, and they kind of leave it up to the audience to choose whether or not the outcome that they settle on was right or wrong. Mm-hmm. And Star Trek kind of pioneered that. Mm-hmm. And when you look at Discovery and Picard, it's very obvious that they've left that behind, and they fall on one side and they're like, this is the right thing and this is the wrong thing, and you better get on board with the right thing, otherwise you're stupid.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit, because even in the Orville, the episodes where they were dealing with the sexual orientation of Mortis's old boyfriend and things like that was very clearly like, this is the stance we're taking. If you're prejudiced against this person for that specific reason, you are a bad person. And they have that conflict in the show. There's a lot of times where you're like, this is wrong and this is right, and we don't care to save your feelings for it. So I don't know if that's necessarily true.
I think they handle it a lot better. Like if you think about that Orville episode where where they changed the sex
of the baby,
yeah, and like like if they were going to kind of be preachy about it and like this is right versus this is wrong, that baby would have stayed a female. But at the end, they went like you're watching it and you're thinking that's kind of what's going to happen. But at the end, it doesn't go that way.
Yeah.
They go through with it, and they do present both sides, and sometimes it doesn't always go like the way you think. Like
that created a rift in that relationship later on in that season, correct? If I remember right.
Yeah. What's his name?
That was the reason why he had the porn addiction. Because he felt like he was negated with his opinion.
It also led to him getting stabbed.
Yeah.
It's like the Orville's kind of fascinating, right? Because they get us involved in a same-sex relationship with a child, where a lot of conservative people would be nothing about that.
It's an alien, so
but
it's okay.
It's an alien race, so it's like, okay, we'll watch. It's fascinating to me how.
Well, see, that's those progressive values being put into a situation that you can kind of like.
It's funny though, because if you look at Bortus's relationship with I forget his husband, and then you compare that to Discovery's Stamets and the Doctor.
It's completely different.
I always felt
so old after a while.
I always felt like that Stamets' relationship was very boring and kind of like uninteresting and almost cringy at times.
Their relationship to me is just look how progressive we are. We're going to kiss on scene.
There was no chemistry between them.
Right, exactly. But Orville, you have Clyden and Bortus, and it just seems way more organic and natural to me. And it's
their relationship is so much more interesting to me, and I don't know why that is necessarily.
Because it feels more real, I think, because they have conflict.
Right.
It just feels more authentic.
Yeah, but it's also interesting that entire species is male. So of course you're going to have like these, homosexual relationships. But kind of learning about their culture and how like their relationships are different. It makes them so much more fascinating to me.
In my head, I don't even know how to say this, but the Discovery guys, they're way more effeminate than Clyden and
very much so.
Clyden and Bortus are. So I don't know how to say what I want to say right now, but it's like these two really soy-based gay guys, and then you got Bordas and Clyden were like very much so. And it's just like it's completely different. It's strange.
It's a weird. Okay, so from my perspective, because I'm kind of on the same page as you, but a little less offensive.
I'm an offensive guy. That's just how I am, man.
The way I see it is, it's not necessarily that they're more effeminate or less effeminate or whatever. It's just the dynamic between that relationship was so over dramatic.
Yeah.
The situation that they put themselves in, and like going back and forth between being in love and not being in love, and just how like it was just like, oh my God, it got tiresome. I was like, oh my God.
There wasn't enough character development for me with the lack of chemistry that they had for me to kind of
forced.
Yeah, exactly. Felt very forced. I didn't care really.
And how they brought the Doctor back to life. Like they killed him off before we could really get any real emotional attachment to him.
Yeah.
And then they bring him back and everyone's like now care for this character, and you're just like, why?
He's like a mushroom person now, right?
Yeah, like when he came back, he was like so traumatized that like you couldn't connect with him on any level. And so like when he finally did heal his relationship with Stamets, I was like, I don't care. I don't feel like that was earned.
See, and that's the
Some
problem
people
with
probably
Discovery.
disagree, but
The problem with Discovery is we don't have any buy-in on any of the characters.
well,
We don't even know half their names.
Yeah, they did a terrible job of introducing. I mean, we talked about that almost every podcast.
Yeah.
Like, you have to have a roll call in the second season because we don't know any of the bridge crew. The only people we know are Burnham. What's her name?
Burnham. Michael Burnham.
Burnham.
O.
And what's Doug Jones's character?
Saru.
Saru.
Who I think is actually the best character.
He's the best character of the show.
He's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
He is Star Trek to me.
He annoyed me in the first season. I thought his like stupid little squiggly things that alerted him to danger were dumb. And then by the second season, I was like, oh, this guy's
They did a lot
cool.
of course correcting on the second season.
Yeah.
But getting back to Picard, it's like we don't like it's a smaller crew, so like we kind of know their names. I still don't remember the Doctor's name, but you know, there's so much stuff in here that you know, this last episode where, for instance, Rafi's a strange kid. Like they had a whole scene of character development with her showing that like she was a bad mom and like she wants to make amends with her.
Apparently she was some kind of junkie.
Yeah.
We don't know what kind of.
And I'm just like bored because I don't care about her. Like every time she calls Picard JL, I roll my eyes and I want to shut off the TV.
Drives me crazy.
Yeah,
That's explained. That's explained in a comic book that you never read.
Yeah.
But this is the problem with the show. Like the Doctor, even probably the most promising character, which is Captain Rios, like they all just seem really flat and uninteresting and boring. And the only characters that really kind of pop on the screen are these legacy characters like Picard and Seven. And you're just like, I want to see more of them because, they're so much more fleshed out and interesting.
You think we're going to see Seven again? Because it felt like we want. Yeah, I don't think so.
No, she was only listed for 2 episodes.
She's a murderer now. So
she's also apparently a lesbian.
Oh,
she's bisexual.
There's no reason for that. Okay, as a Super Voyager fan, 2 things. 1, Seven has always been kind of kill happy. I'm just going to say that. Like,
she's not a murderer.
No, but she was not afraid to take people down. I'll have to say that as a Voyager fan. And then 2, as a Voyager fan, she fell in love with like 3 different people in Voyager. She had a relationship with Harry Kim for a short time. She fell in love with Chakotay for a while. And then their relationship, it was kind of like an offshoot timeline that they did. Mm-hmm. And then finally, she fell in love with the guy from Unimatrix Zero. And that was like the whole reason why she wanted to go there and live there and kind of protect these people is because she fell for this one guy. So now to have this whole thing, it just seems so forced and out of nowhere. Like there's no reason for it, especially if she's only going to be in 2 episodes. Like, why would you even bother?
Did we ever get any context as to her relationship with Picard, like how she knew him or?
No, which was fascinating to me because like they act like they see each other and they act like he's like 7 of 9. Like he acts like they're old friends, but like as far as I know, they've never met, right?
I mean, no, they've never met. I think
probably in a book or something.
I think what the showrunner said was like because they have this, Picard has this unique connection to the Borg, and then having 7 of 9 once she gets back from Voyager's show and she's on Earth. At some point in time, their paths must have crossed because of that connection with the Borg. There had to have been some reason.
Like,
but again, it's all.
If 35 of 50 from adjunct section 74 from the Delta Quadrant comes in, and is he going to know that guy?
Maybe.
Okay.
Well, the whole thing is
it's a hive mind. Everybody knows everybody.
but the show has the habit of opening each episode with a flashback.
Yeah.
Like how hard would it have been to show a flashback of Picard and Seven?
I can't defend this show. I can only try and just pick out the little bits of good stuff I can find.
This is an issue with the bad robot school of writing, and J.J. Abrams is very guilty of this, where basically because the audience knows something, he just puts it in movies assuming that the characters also know this. Mm-hmm. Whereas, you know, if you actually look at the internal consistency and logic of a standalone story, you should have characters discover things on their own separate from the audience's knowledge. Yeah. But because they're bad writers and they're lazy writers, they just take what the audience already knows about characters and assumes that the characters know it as well. And that's a telltale sign that you're dealing with a bad writer. Mm. And all the Kurtzman stuff does this. It's ridiculous. And I hate it.
Here's what I know. When I go to the Star Trek convention this August with you guys, I'm going to steal Alex's shirt here, except it's going to say each have deserved better.
Oh, man.
Totally. Yeah.
The con's going to be super fun this year.
I don't know.
Well, yeah. Like I said last podcast, I was surprised at how happy everybody was there. And there was a lot of people wearing Discovery memorabilia and cosplay. I was like, I mentioned before, the online community kind of has this love-hate relationship with Discovery, but then when I went to the con, everybody's like, we love Discovery. I'm like, wow, that's so weird.
Yeah, I don't know. You guys, it makes me feel old. Maybe just because I am, but it's it's changed so much. I can't they're changing Star Trek for this newer audience, and I just feel like with the generation, the millennials or whatever they're calling the new one after that, they've just been raised so differently with having a tablet in their hand from the moment they could make any kind of decisions or whatever, or come up with any original thoughts, and they've been connected to all these people on the internet. And the internet's kind of a shitty place, man. People just complain about everything. I know we're sitting here and we're being salty and kind of complaining, so it's not helping. But it just seems like there's just so much negative energy out there, and then they're writing to that audience, and it's just.
Oh, it's interesting. Do you think that's where this?
I feel like it is they're going down this dark path to cater to this jaded generation.
Instead of a utopian future, we have a dystopian future, which is coming across in our entertainment industry.
Yeah, and that's not what I want from Star Trek.
The biggest thing that kills me about this
that's
whole
not
situation,
what we need from Star Trek either.
Yeah,
the biggest thing is so they're saying that they're trying to redo Star Trek to appeal to a more mainstream audience, but it's behind the CBS All Access paywall. And who the fuck is subscribing to CBS to see new Star Trek? It's the hardcore Star Trek fans. Mm-hmm. So it's we're making this for people who aren't subscribing to see it. We're all the subscribers are the people who want more of the original Star Trek, and they're not getting it. So it's they don't even think about the audience they're making the show for.
Yeah.
So the question is are these shows successful to the studios on a bottom line basis, not on the writing or on the legacy of Star Trek?
Is it?
If they're successful, then they have no reason to change, right?
They judge it based off of subscriber numbers. Mm-hmm. So when Picard premiered, they saw a big uptick in subscribers, and those subscribers are going to continue to be subscribed up until the show ends. But right after Picard ends, Discovery starts. So it's basically how much of that subscriber base is going to be retained over the long run, because it's all about the subscripen revenue.
So many people like us are just going to hate watch these shows.
Right.
That's all I'm doing now. I hate watching.
So my mom's been wanting to watch it, and she doesn't. She's a little bit older. She doesn't even have internet. Bless her. She goes to the library. She's one of those. Wow. And so she was trying to ask me how she could watch it, and I was like, Mom, look, just wait till all the episodes are out. Sign up for their 7-day free trial. And just binge watch it, and then decide if you want to spend the money, because I don't think you're going to like this show. Yeah. I was like, this is what I told her. Because right now, my buddy Eric he got CBS All Access, and he shares it with me and a few other people, and we actually watch it together. When the day of the premiere, we got a hotel room. I have cats, and a couple of my friends are allergic to cats, so we got a hotel room at the Rio. We went there and we watched a bunch of old.
Did a whole thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We went all. We watched a bunch of episodes leading up to Picard. We played Star Trek trivia. Klingon Monopoly.
Do you guys remember that game where the Klingon takes over the Enterprise?
Yes, I love that game. games, DVD interactive game. Oh my god,
I had that game when I was a kid. I put the little Star Trek emblem on my shirt collar and everything.
Oh, it's so funny. I forget what it's called, but I love that game.
Yeah, I do too.
I gotta find some Star Trek friends. we used to do this thing up in Oregon.
Chopped liver?
Yeah. We used to do this thing up in Oregon when I lived up there, and there was about 10 of us or so, and we'd get together every year on William Shatner's birthday.
Yeah.
Oh wow!
And we'd have a birthday party. It was a Spock, and because they were both born like 2 weeks apart or something like that. So we'd have a birthday party for Shatner and Nimoy, and my wife would make a green Orion girl slave cake and stuff.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was fun. We had a good time.
We don't do all that, but like every
we hire a green hooker. It's
yeah, right. No, but every Wednesday night, because they drop the show around 11ish. We at least me and Eric, maybe a couple other people, and we'll watch Picard together, and then we'll spend an hour bitching and complaining.
Yeah. Should record that and put that out on iTunes.
Yeah, right.
Have you guys been watching The Ready Room?
No.
I do.
I have a hard enough time watching Picard.
Yeah.
The shilling is so thick.
Yeah.
It is, but you have to expect that.
But Will Wheaton.
He pisses me off as soon as the show starts because he gets on there and he goes, "Hey nerds," and then I'm just like, "F you, Will Wheaton," and then I want to turn it off.
Well, have you ever seen his sci-fi show where it's basically like Talk Soup but with Will Wheaton?
No.
And it's the exact same format where he's in front of a green screen and he's like bantering. And you're just like, oh my God, this is the most terrible thing I've ever seen in my life. So cringy and awkward. Because he's not personable.
Yeah,
I feel like it would be better if you just played into the fact that he's an asshole.
I think isn't that what he's doing? I always get that. I always get that feeling.
I watched a few of them. The last one. Are we talking about Picard now? But when it was Will Wheaton had Frakes and Brent Spiner on last week, and Spiner, I think, was just a clown. He was actually kind of funny because Frakes took up 90% of the show, and Brent Spiner's there. Okay, do I get to talk now? So yeah,
did you connect with that? You connected with that?
I did connect with that. Data's the plucky sidekick of the show.
Can we talk about the latest episode of Picard?
We can talk about whatever you want. It's our show.
Well, have you seen it?
I have not. No. Go ahead. I don't care if I can see it.
So I know Matt said that he liked it.
This is the reunion episode.
Yeah.
Right? Well, this was the one with number one and Troy.
I just had the Troy and Riker glasses on.
Yeah.
I can't really get a score for it because it's just nostalgia eating at my whatever, but I think
whatever's left of your heart.
Yeah. And I think that's what everybody who kind of liked this episode is saying. It's like, oh, but it had the people from Next Generation in it, which is true. And I did kind of like their kid, but it's just not that good of a show.
I had I'd say 4 major issues with this last episode. Mm-hmm. The first of it being, it was good to see, Riker and Troy come back.
Yeah.
And that was nice. But Picard was just an asshole throughout the entire episode. And I'm like, this isn't the same Picard that I knew from the Next Generation. Like, it was almost like they dialed back his character arc because he's just a jerk. And he keeps getting bitched out by people because of it. But the other thing was spoiler. Is this okay? Okay. Hugh getting killed.
Oh yeah.
In the most stupid way possible.
Yeah, it's dumb.
And the fact that what's his name, Elron, who's the Elf Falcon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Elnor.
His name is Elnor?
Elnor of the Tree People.
Yeah, his name is Elnor.
So is that similar?
It's that similar.
Oh my God.
So in the previous episode, Elnor and Hugh teamed up to cover Picard's escape. And we see them kind of getting together to take on the Vulcan or the Romulan security team.
Guys or whatever, yeah.
That's coming for them. And then in this episode, we open with Hugh being a captive, and Elnor is just nowhere to be found.
You almost said Elnut.
And then Elnor shows up midway through the episode, and you're like, where the fuck have you been when all the Borg or XBs were being executed? And he's fighting these guys with phasers with his sword, and it's just so bizarre.
It's so dumb.
It really is dumb.
It's so dumb.
Choose to live.
Yeah, choose to live. And then Hugh just gets a knife to the throat
from 30 feet
knife
away.
to the throat.
Yeah, knife. That's how he dies.
Oh my god!
Like it's not even a stab. Someone throws a knife at him and it hits him in the throat.
Yeah, the Vulcan chick.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
Yeah, from like 100
This
yards
is
away.
the same. Oh my god, that's so wacky.
And
like, why would you go through all the trouble of bringing back all these characters that everybody knows and loves just to like murder them?
So my
such a
Icheb Deserve Better t-shirt is growing.
yeah,
It's going to say Icheb 7.
it's just to start with
You,
Picard.
Picard, yeah.
deserve better.
everyone deserves Star Trek deserves better. But yeah, so like first we get the gruesome torture and murder of Icheb, and then we get this throwaway death of Hugh, who was like a major character in the Next Generation, you know, just in terms of like the Borg mythology and stuff like that. And I felt like it was just a very disrespectful throwaway death. Like they could have given him like a much more poignant way to go out if they wanted to kill him off. And it almost felt like it was in service to the Elnor character. It's like, okay, we're done with you. Let's punch up Elnor. But it just like, it didn't really land with me. And I feel like all the stuff with Troy and Riker's daughter, where she's talking about Data, it's like, she didn't know Data. She wasn't born before Data died, right?
Yeah, no, because Data died in
so
Nemesis.
like the entire episode, she's telling Soji all about how great Data is, and you're just like, she never met Data.
Yeah.
None of it made sense.
Yeah, she was...
Data died in Nemesis, which was which is the whole basis for 20 years later. After
and then
Picard,
like they had just gotten married.
Yeah, then Riker and Troy went off on the Titan.
Yeah,
which was alluded to in that movie, and
she wouldn't
had kids.
Yeah, she wouldn't have been born before he died. So how would she know him? That's so weird.
And then they had their firstborn son passed away.
Yeah,
from some bullshit carbon silicone based virus, right?
They made it clear that the ban on AI is what killed their kid.
Yes.
What now?
And that's why they're at this planet, because the soil has regenerative
the planet
properties.
It's like,
but they got there too late.
Okay.
So
it's like a Project Genesis planet.
Yeah, so the whole planet, or the whole episode, they're there. They live there because they're basically mourning their son now, and Troy's all mopey and sad the whole time, and you know, it's just like, okay, whatever.
Riker was more Picard than Picard was.
Yeah,
like Riker was dropping some truth bombs and like some logic bombs. Like I was like, where'd this Riker come from?
Yeah. Captain Riker.
Jonathan Frakes left all the good dialogue for him.
No, it's funny because like he has a couple scenes with Picard where he just makes Picard his bitch.
Yeah, he does.
Wow, really?
Yeah. You basically says you've gotten old and need to like get your shit together, I think, and this is why.
That's funny.
Well, he's making bunny corn pizza.
Yeah.
Unicorn rabbit pizza.
Do you remember the part where they were
I just flashed back to that. I just so stupid. Look, guys, bunnies with a unicorn horn. You can't do any better than that.
Do you remember the part where Riker is talking to Picard by that lake? Like they're just sitting on that bench that they have out, like overlooking the water, and he just puts his arm around Picard like it's like his like teenage son come home, and it just feels like he's just like turning Picard out at that point.
I don't know. I think a lot of people liked that, didn't they?
Yeah, it was. It was an okay scene. It was fine.
I saw the scenes in the pictures and stuff.
It felt
nice seeing them together again.
It felt like the roles should have been reversed though to me, because I always felt like number one was Picard's like protege, like he looked at him like a elder son type thing, and in this episode the roles were just reversed. It was like Picard is a doddering old man who needs to be treated like a child by Riker, and I didn't like it.
The same thing about him with 7 of 9. So it was like Picard thinks that mercy still exists in the universe.
Oh, I didn't say that. What I said,
old man.
Yeah, what I said when it came to 7 of 9 was like she basically felt like, or she basically negated the whole premise of Star Trek, which was that Picard is naive and thinking that humanity is inherently good and that we have to hold on to ideals that put us above our baser instincts, and basically said that's not true and he's stupid to believe that. Like that was my criticism about the 7 of 9 stuff. My criticism with the Riker stuff is that he's basically usurped Picard's role as, you know, the father figure, as the leader, as the guy who knows what the fuck he's doing, and it just felt out of place to me.
I don't completely agree with you, but do see where you're coming from. It's just Riker would have grown. I think
he would have, but I always feel like he wouldn't have surpassed the Master. Like I feel like Picard has been done such a disservice in the show in terms of his character development that every episode that he's in, it feels like he's taking back seats to characters who are just nowhere near as interesting as he is.
Well, that's
kind of the whole premise of the show. Right?
It's like trying to pass the torch to the next generation.
We're gonna have this iconic figure
pass the torch.
Be on this show, pass the torch to these characters that literally nobody cares about.
Yeah. Like even Captain Rios, who I think is the most interesting of the new characters, like he's so cardboard. Like there's nothing distinctive about him that makes me want to continue to watch his exploits or something like that.
Why hasn't the EMH popped on and said, "Hey, I just watched this stupid scientist chick murder this guy"?
I know, right? Because apparently EMHs are like, they just get dismissed even when they're needed. It's like, what's the nature of your emergency? Get out of here.
It's like, but you're killing this guy. Delete the EMH. It's like, okay. But
I don't think the doctor would have stand for that. He would. I mean, there was plenty of times where people were like, "We don't need you right now," and he's like, "Yes, you do." Get out of the way. Let me help this guy.
And more F-bombs being dropped.
Gosh. All right. Enough about Picard.
Sheer effing hubris.
Bunny corns.
Yeah. Bunny corn.
All right.
Speaking of sci-fi that we've come to hate.
Yeah. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to dump a truckload of salt on Star Trek
Strap
Picard.
in for the long haul.
We're going to talk about this, and I think across the board, nobody's really happy with it. I'm so unhappy with it that I didn't even finish it.
Okay. Before we get started on Star Trek Picard, I have a surprise for you guys.
We have another surprise?
Bring up I'm already clutching my chest here. Just like,
Danny, I'm sorry I didn't plan ahead for you.
It's okay, man.
So we've been talking about Star Trek Picard for a long time, and
oh my god,
wow! I got you guys
world
T-shirts to celebrate our hatred.
Each deserve better. Oh my god, we were talking about that last time I was here.
With an eyeball.
Oh my god. So where did you get that?
I made them.
You made them.
Oh, that's good.
So like for the longest time, we've been talking about how we need T-shirts that said each of deserve better.
Yeah.
That's getting worn
genius.
too.
I know if we buy that shirt, myself included, so
we need to wear.
I designed and got these shirts way before they killed off Hugh, and like as we said in the previous episode, Matt was like, "My each of deserve better shirt keeps getting bigger." So many characters deserve better than
everybody in that show deserves better. Like once we start talking.
No, keep going. Go ahead. I haven't watched it, so I'm gonna stay pretty quiet. But I know.
You didn't watch the last episode?
I don't. I stopped. Caring. I watched the episode with 7 of 9 and I was like, this ain't it, man.
Which one? She's been in.
She's in it.
The first one where she goes to the casino planet and murders a bunch of people. I was like, this ain't my show.
It's so if all of the people on what's the name of that AI planet? It's like
I don't even care. Flower planet.
Yeah.
the orchids, the orchid planet.
So all of those androids are supposed to be made from data. Okay, so
in what way? Like from their positronic,
from that weird positronic neuron particle that existed somewhere.
But all of them are basically Data's children in a way.
Okay.
And so by the time you get to the end of this most recent episode, I felt like, I think we had an exchange on Twitter about this, I felt like they just shit all over Data's legacy because they actually end up being evil. Mm-hmm. They really are the bad guys. Yeah. And it's like, so are you telling me
so the Romulans were vindicated?
Hold on, before we get into this. Okay.
It just seemed to me like Data, they were saying in a way that if Data was alive, Data would have ended up being a bad guy too.
Okay, let's put the brakes on this for just a second.
Sure.
Okay, so basically we're on episode 9 of Picard. There's one more episode to go, penultimate episode. And there's a lot of stuff that's been happening in this show that doesn't make any sense. And this episode was kind of like the culmination of what the fuckness when it comes to this series.
I love there's so much swearing this week. It is
if they could swear on Picard.
So me and Matt had like some conversations about this where I would point out stuff and he'd be like, holy shit, you're right. I never thought about that. So Matt, why don't you give us your impression of this latest episode of Picard?
That was just terrible. It's just I don't even.
You're the big Star Trek fan.
Articulate a little bit more.
It was just bad. I mean, there's nothing Star Trek about it, really. It's just everything they do breaks things. You know,
we can't. There's a lot of visually. There was a lot. It reminded me a lot of the original series, because like the terrain, the feel, the utopian, the way the people were dressed. To me, like
there's nothing Star Trek about the story.
No, totally, 100%. You know, it feels like they're...
Which seems to be the thing, a going theme I hear a lot of people say is like, visually, it looks great. Yeah, like, oh, I love the visuals.
I mean, everything looks great visually.
Yeah.
The Last Jedi looked great visually. Yeah. It doesn't make it a good movie.
Right, no.
I mean, they lost me. I mean, I just kind of quit paying attention after the giant flowers came up from the planet's surface and swallowed the ships and crashed them onto the planet.
Borg Cube.
Yeah,
Borg Cube didn't do shit. It shows up and you're thinking like, oh my god, that shot, because when it comes out of that whatever the
wormhole,
the conduit,
the transwarp conduit,
it looks so badass, and you think, yes, the Seven's here with the Borg Cube, she's gonna wreck shop, and then a couple flowers
come up and rested gently down,
one shot off.
See, like there was like about that whole scene, you know. The flower come up and swallows the Eddie Van Halen guitar ship, right?
So there's a global defense system around the secret planet that's in a 8-star system thing that can only be gotten to through subwarp or transwarp wormholes, and they send this global defense system, which are basically space flowers after these ships.
Giant orchids.
Yeah. And they come up and they swallow the ships that are fighting with each other, and they crash land them on the planet.
Within walking distance,
they crashed the Borg. They crashed the Borg ship. Yeah. The other ones they brought down kind of gingerly, and there's nothing wrong.
I don't know about that because the ship that had Picard and them on it crashed.
Did it crash?
There's a literal trench of where you can see the ship crash on the planet. So it crashed, but not as it didn't get destroyed.
All within walking distance of this settlement.
Yeah, so you got this giant 5-mile wide Borg cube. I don't know how big they are, but. You know, plus the other ship, and all within like 5 clicks of the compound where all the hippie droids are at, right? And I'm sorry, they lost me with the Borg Cube, even because if it had crash landed on the planet within 100 miles of that place, they would have all been eviscerated.
Enough to be like embedded in the ground, like it was.
Yeah. It's just
because like I think they're saying that the flowers slowed its descent, so it didn't actually crash, but still it was like. Even if it had hit a little bit, there would have been like some cratering.
We have problems with the physics.
It's just everything's just super convenient. Yeah. It's like, oh, here's Legolas shows up and it's like, oh, hey, Picard, and hey, what you doing? And then Seven pops out. And it's like, oh, hey, what you doing? Blah, blah. It's like it was.
Let me ask you guys this question. So in the Space Vegas episode, basically Maddox goes to this crime boss. Because he's being chased by the Zhat Vash, and he thinks that they're out to kill him. And he basically got money for some reason. Some people need money now. He got money from this crime boss in order to create his secret lab where he was able to make Soji and her sister. But when we go to Flower Planet, they have like this whole big utopian lab there. Mm-hmm. So was that the lab he used the money for to create Soji, or was that already there and he left that lab to create a new lab?
I don't know. It seemed to me because of how Data's brother, AI Soong, did you notice that? His Artemis Ingenious Soong, so his initials are AI Soong.
Oh, God.
Did you notice that?
No, I did not notice that.
So I thought that was a funny touch. And he's trying to transfer his consciousness. This guy named AI Soong is trying to transfer his consciousness into an android body, and that's what he's getting the doctor that murdered Maddox to help him do. And oh my God, never mind.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's just so many questions that I have about the show that aren't easily answered. And it frustrates me.
A lot of dots they expect us to connect. So to answer you, I think that he probably did get the money for that because AI Soon was talking about how Maddox was there helping him work on this stuff.
Yeah,
so
but I mean,
unless maybe he thought AI Soon's going a little crazy.
If that lab was so freaking secret and hard to get to, why did he have to leave it if he was worried the Zhat Vash were going to kill him?
Yeah.
Wouldn't leaving that place put him in more danger?
Yeah. And
why go to the person who's a known crime boss who gave you the money that she's going to want to collect on for help? Why not go to Picard, who he programmed into the two androids to go to when they were in trouble?
Because then we wouldn't have a
show. Yeah, then we wouldn't have a show.
It's like that. That's great fodder for like how it should have ended videos or something. So I don't know. My big problems are I wanted better for Picard.
Yeah,
he deserved better because he ends up like this whole story of him now is he's ended up alone, betrayed by the Federation.
He's a doddering fool.
Gave his life work to, and he's just kind of sad.
Yeah,
and it's just so sad. That
scene where he tries to convince all the androids that he can help them by going to Starfleet and making their case. It's like you couldn't even do that for the Romulans.
And Soon says that.
Yeah, and they point out the fact that he's just been a failure for like years. Yeah, and it's so depressing.
It is. I really hate what they've done. Like, I can't believe Patrick Stewart was like, yeah, this is great. This is what I want to do with
that's the thing that gets me is everybody's like, oh, I can't believe the writers of this show just shit on Picard. I'm like, freaking Patrick Stewart was one of the writers.
Yeah, he was like all on board for this.
And that breaks my heart because I'm thinking like Patrick Stewart should be the one who he covets this character.
He did say he didn't want to do any more Picard shows unless they took his character in some new and
no, this was
crazy direction, right?
And you know what the direction is going to be. Picard's going to get his brain downloaded into that golem that Dr. Soon was going to use for himself, and he's going to be replaced by a younger, cheaper actor.
Yep.
So they can continue doing the show called Picard with like a new Picard.
God, I hope not. Yeah. I was kind of hoping. I'm kind of leaning toward that they somehow, because they're shooting seasons 2 and 3 back to back at the same time.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, that's what I read. Well, I mean, I don't know about the coronavirus stuff now, but they're supposed to start this summer and they're shooting seasons 2 and 3 together, like back to back. And I think that somehow in this last episode, maybe they're going to cure him. Like he's like that's kind of what I was thinking might happen before the reveal that they're actually evil. So because like, how are they going to do seasons 2 and 3?
Can we talk about the big twist of episode 9, which was that everything we've been told up to this point has been correct?
Yeah.
That the AIs are evil because they're going to precipitate the wiping out of all organic life. And that the Zhat Vash are completely justified in wanting to kill them all.
Yeah. No, it's crazy because that
Isn't
warning.
That the Borg though?
No. Well, see, the warning. The Borg wants to assimilate.
Yeah.
So they compared it to when Zephyr Cochrane broke the warp barrier and got the Vulcans' attention. So this beacon or warning on that planet with the 8 suns or whatever,
the grief planet,
that's
literally what
was actually left there to leave a message for the AI, for the androids. Yeah. So once you get to a certain level, no matter what, for thousands of years, all cultures, when AI gets to a certain level, they get scared and they try to kill you. So once it gets to that point, use this beacon, call us, we'll come, we'll wipe out all organic life, and then you can join our federation of AIs. And that's what the actual beacon.
The look on your face.
The look on Alex's face.
So basically, once
he's like, wait, what?
Yeah, no, it's crazy. So that means and all these people were made from data, or all these androids were made from data. So it's just like, I don't know. I really.
How does this tie into?
And the weird thing is, like, they are biosynth androids, so they're part biological. Biological, and so like, wouldn't they be wiped out too? But like, the whole premise is that organics become jealous of these robotics.
They never grow old
because they never grow old, and they keep evolving, and it's just like wait, what?
Yeah,
that doesn't make any sense.
So I don't know. Like, I can't help but watch it. Because but it's so heartbreaking. Like, so like it sucks. I was talking to you guys before we started recording about how my roommate moved away to be with his family because of coronavirus. But like, he and I, we were so excited. We had people over to watch the episode with us. I grilled up a bunch of steaks and like, we just had a really good time. We watched the episode, and at the end of it, it was like we'd both been like punched in the gut. We were just like, God, this is so sad. This is so depressing.
I mean, the entire,
the Romulans, who we thought were the bad guys, are actually the good guys the whole time. And
the entire series,
Picard's an idiot.
I think Red Letter Media said it best, where it's like the entire series was written by someone who only watched the Next Generation movies and didn't quite understand them, because like you have in the previous episode 8. So Seven of Nine, or Seven, whatever she's called now, she becomes the Borg queen. She hooks into the Borg cube.
Okay.
And her plan is to awaken all the Borg in order to fight off the Romulans who are trying to like basically kill them all. And so she wakes up all the Borg, and the Romulans open the doors and just have the Borg sucked into the vacuum of space and kill them all. And so like hundreds of thousands of Borg just get sucked into space.
Yeah, it was
and but then like you're sitting there, it's like, but wait, Borg can exist in the vacuum. Like they don't need oxygen, or they're immune to the temperature change. So like, and plus,
don't they all have like their own little force fields too around their bodies? But that's established in every.
But they don't need air.
Yeah, and the fact that Seven basically was jacked into the cube and could control every aspect of it. Number one, why did she allow the door to be open to like suck all the people out into space? And number two, why didn't she just teleport them back into their little pods after it happened? Because the Borg can do that, right?
Yep.
So like there's a lot of things where it's like, did the writers of the show ever bother to do any research into how Borg operate, like at all?
They I don't think they did. It's pretty apparent.
Yeah. and like the real question is, so basically you have the Borg artifact, which is the name of the ship that is no longer under Borg control. And you have the Romulans who are doing the Borg Reclamation Project, which I guess is a treaty with the Federation, where they've got like this kind of UN of scientists who are coming to not only try to save all the people on this Borg ship who were assimilated and bring them back.
But weren't they butchering them?
No. They were
healing them. They were taking away all the Borg technology to try to.
I don't know if that's actually been determined what they're doing to what end.
Well, they've mentioned that there was a treaty between the Romulans and the Federation to kind of share the research of this Borg cube, and Hugh was there to lead the reclamation project. But the real question is, like, number one, why did Maddox send Soji there? And number two, like, why are the Romulans doing this? Like, was this all just a big setup to lure Maddox out and try to find out where this planet is? Like, it's never really clear. And if it is that, like, it's the most convoluted plot ever conceived.
I want to know if the Zot Vosh chick got assimilated on purpose so she could break the Borg cube with her infinite grief. Sadness.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was on purpose.
Wait, what?
So the Borg cube, she got assimilated, the chick with the crazy hair, right?
Okay.
The one who was like, destroy!
Destroy her! So she got sucked into the cube, got assimilated. When she got plugged in,
and she was a secret member of the Zot Vosh.
Yeah, when she got plugged in, her memories from the ceremony broke the cube from her utter sadness.
Her depression broke
depression. So the cube got severed from the collective because they were too sad.
Because they're like, there's too much sadness from the cube. We need to cut it off.
It's the sad cube.
It wasn't just that. Did you see the episode?
Yes.
Well, she went.
That's legit what happened, Alex.
She had a psychotic break because like everybody else killed themselves or ripped their faces off or smashed their heads in with rock, and she had. She didn't have a psychotic break, though, because she eventually recovered and went on to be a researcher on the Romulan ship that got assimilated. Okay.
So she was normal when she was getting assimilated. But because of her visions of what would happen through the Grief Planet ceremony, being assimilated triggered something in her that caused her to remember that stuff as she was being assimilated. Yeah. And so like her sadness, her infinite grief over this stuff affected the Borg cube so badly.
You don't think Annika got taken from her parents and turned into a Borg at like 9 years old, had infinite grief? What did
yeah, it's so dumb.
But
that doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't, but she also saw like the end of all life, not just humanity, but
what about Icheb? His parents used him as a biological weapon twice.
Yeah.
You don't think he was sad?
There's a lot that's just, why couldn't they get, what is his name? Stephen, the guy did Deep Space Nine.
Ira Stephen Bear.
Yeah, that guy. They should have got somebody like him.
He's too busy doing the Orville.
One of the writers or something.
Yeah, he's too busy making, good Star Trek.
Like my real question, like there's so many things that needed to be set up for this show that just haven't been answered. Like for instance, what's the state of the Romulan Empire? Because like it's been established that the neutral zone doesn't exist because the two home planets of the Romulan Empire have been destroyed
by a supernova,
and
right?
they have refugees all over the galaxy spread out there, and yet they have a fleet of 212 ships that are coming to destroy the flower planet. They have treaties with the Federation to have like a joint research operation on this thing. They have a standing military. It's like, does the Romulan Empire exist or doesn't it? And if it does exist, why are they letting all their refugees just linger on these like terrible planets? If you have 217 ships at your disposal to go destroy the flower planet, why isn't one of them at that one place where they picked up Elnor to protect it from raiders and stuff? Like, why aren't they giving people their supplies? What are they doing? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's just too convenient. Everything's just made for convenience.
It's not even convenient. It's just confusing.
Yeah, it's just dumb.
It's like they don't know what they're trying to what story they're trying to tell, and the damage they've done to the character of Picard. This is not the Picard I know from even the movies.
It's not, and it's just
they warned us about that though, because they said it multiple times during their little press conference stuff.
But
this isn't the Picard,
But
sad.
It's like The Last Jedi, Luke Skywalker. It's not the same character, and it's not even a believable change from what the character was.
Yeah,
I mean, the way that Jean-Luc Picard treats people in this show is borderline insulting. He's had, he went to go pick up Elnor because he needed someone who could fight for him, and then every time Elnor fights for him, he lectures him on not fighting, and he also the daddy issues that he created with Elnor, like 3 times he's left Elnor to die so far, and each time he's just like see ya, kid, and like the final time that he's with Elnor in this last episode, he tells him that he's dying, and Elnor's like, I just want to be by your side and help you, and Picard's like, fuck no, you stay here, I don't want anything to do with you, and you're wondering what this character was even doing on the show. And then there's a scene in this episode where Rafi, who has arguably the most connection with Picard in this series, at least
according to the show,
like she tells him that she loves him, that she cares about him, like not a romantic love, but just like a father figure love. And Picard is so awkward in that moment where he doesn't know what to say. And I would have preferred it if he'd just been like yes, very good, but instead he's just like, yeah, well, I kind of love you too, I guess. I mean, it was very, very awkward and bizarre. And his relationship with Seven, which was never previously established.
Exactly. They never, that makes me so mad.
These two characters, I mean, there's a big gap of time that they could have met. But
cool, but they have this formulaic version. They have this formulaic version of the show where they open up every show with a flashback. I think we even said this last time I was here. It's like, just give us a freaking 2 or 3 minute backstory on how they know each other. You know what I mean? Or
something.
What's in the
some
comic
context.
Fuck.
He's not even joking either.
and also there's a lot of stuff in the show.
So my TV shows give me homework now?
Yes. It's exactly what it does.
But there's a lot of stuff in the show where it's like, for instance, Raffi's class warfare stuff where she's confronting Picard about living in his vineyard with his antique furniture. And Red Letter Media's review was like, well, all of his actual antique furniture burned down in the fire from the Generations, the movie Generations. So all that antique furniture is replicated. So if Raffi wanted fancy antique furniture, she could have just replicated it. This whole idea that there's now money in the Star Trek universe when
breaks a lot of
when it's been very clearly established that they've moved beyond money doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And it really is like nobody who wrote this show ever bothered to watch an episode of Star Trek in their life.
It's what the pilot episode for the Star Trek Voyager, there was a scene where Harry Kim is sitting in a bar, and of course he's like the naive new recruit ensign guy, and some Ferengi guy is trying to...
It was Quark's bar.
Yeah, he was trying to get him for some jewels or something like that, and they're fighting over how much money he's got and how much he's going to give him, and I'm like, I don't know if is there a rations that the Federation gives out to their cadets or something? I don't know how that all works. So the money aspect of these shows, if you're in the Federation, you don't have to worry about that. But I'm wondering if it's outside the Federation.
Well, the whole thing about matter replication. So when you have unlimited resources, you don't need money because they're just readily available. You go and you have the replicator create whatever it is you want, and you don't need to pay for it. So the idea was that once replication technology became widespread, you could eliminate money, and so people pursued stuff that they were passionate about, and their reward was status or renown or the feeling of accomplishment. And that's how humanity progressed into this idealistic future that Star Trek kind of
if you did come across some kind of a culture that still had some kind of monetary value,
like
they would just trade, right?
Yeah.
Like, we've got some dilithium crystal we can trade for you
here's a
for some
replicator.
a replicator.
Here's translucent aluminum or something like that. Right. Like they would trade technology and ideas and stuff like that. And the Ferengi were kind of because they were so based around such a pure capitalist mentality, they had that gold pressed latinum, which was stuff that could not be replicated. Like, they didn't allow it to be replicated.
There's limits to replicators.
Yeah.
Like, they can't replicate weapons and certain materials.
Anything with complex parts.
Yeah.
So
you can't replicate a $2 trillion stimulus package.
It's too soon, bro. Too soon.
but I mean, there were so many problems with this latest episode of Picard that my brain almost exploded watching it, and I felt genuine rage by the time it was over.
Yeah.
Like genuine like I hated everyone who worked on this show because they're just ruining everything I loved about the character of Picard and the Next Generation.
That's why I have hope for season 2 and 3, because they've hired Mark Bernardin.
You should learn not to hope.
It's the only thing that keeps me going.
As long as Alex Kurtzman is the one running the ship, I don't think that Star Trek in its current iteration will ever right the ship.
Well, I don't know. Mark Bernardin is a huge fan. His first gig in Hollywood was working for Deep Space Nine. He loves Star Trek. Listen to him talk about get this gig, which he got through Instagram, which I think is great. Somebody messaged him on Instagram. I was like, hey, if you're not still working, would you like to come work on Picard? And he was just like, that's like my dream job.
Yeah.
And so and he's one of those guys who huge Next Generation fan. To him, that's like his Star Trek. He's watched all the episodes tons of times. He's like one of those, like he rival everybody here at this table with his trivia knowledge of TNG. I have hope that he's going to help fix a lot of the stuff, because he's had a lot of the same kind of grievances, because he's the co-host on Fat Man Beyond with Kevin Smith.
Oh, nice.
And so he's already aired a lot of his grievances.
Is that the guy with white hair?
No, he's a black fella. He's kind of like,
Oh, okay. I'll have to watch it. Okay.
Yeah.
What's his name again?
Mark Bernardin. I love the guy. And he, so he gives me hope, because he's supposed to.
So he's voiced his grievances with the show as well.
Yeah,
publicly.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So at least we know he's kind of on the same page.
Yeah. But he's going to be one of the writers, so it's not like he's going to be. We'll see how much influence he can have, but because he made jokes about even bringing back Wesley.
As long as Akiva Goldsman and Alex Kurtzman are in charge.
No, Kurtzman, I don't understand how that guy is still involved with Star Trek.
So Vader, you and I were kind of talking about stuff regarding the show as well. Like, what were some of your problems with this episode other than the space flowers?
I don't know, man. There was just all the different versions of the androids. It's like, to me, in my head, they should all look somewhat similar. The mind meld was done.
Yeah, the robot mind meld.
The mind meld.
So one of the androids mind melds with Dr. Girardi. And it's just like, wait a minute, that's not how mind melding works.
I know, that really, really pissed me off. That really pissed me off, because I'm like, you can study, the excuse they gave was like she was such a great student of Vulcan culture and history, but now this android can do mind melds like that. To me, that was another thing.
I don't think you know who we're talking about, right? So there's an android that's on the show. She's the model prior to Sochi and
Dodge.
Yeah, her name looks
just like her, but datafied.
Be like their mom. She's all gold,
yellow skin, gold
Data's
skin,
eyes.
Okay. Yellow eyes.
She goes up to the doctor chick,
the blonde
right?
chick, right?
Girardi.
And
Dr.
full on mind melds her, your mind to my mind, blah blah blah.
And we're like, this is how she gets
whoa.
exposed to the Grief Planet's message.
Yes.
And because she's an android, she can understand the full message. And it's basically everything we've been told is right. You need to destroy all organics.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's very strange.
And she does something heinously evil to set things in motion. So they capture. We're going into spoilers, right?
We've been spoiling the whole thing. Yeah.
So she captures that little hamster-looking Romulan dude that seduced Sochi. I forget his name.
Narek.
So they capture him, right? And this what's her name? The gold Soji.
Gold Soji.
Yeah, sure. We'll just call her that.
Sutra.
Sutra. So Sutra is, like lets him go and she kills one of her fellow android people to frame him. To frame him so they can say, see, humans are bad.
And she kills the android by stabbing her in the eye with a Blue Jay brooch.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, I'm like, wait a minute.
Androids are like super durable and strong and can withstand pretty much anything.
Yeah. It's like, couldn't they just repair the android that got stabbed? like, why is she dead?
Yeah. So it's just yeah,
I think we just broke Alex.
Yeah. It's just.
I
don't want to watch this show. I stopped wanting to, and now I'm like,
and the moment that Brent Spiner showed up in this episode, where he just shows up and he's like, I know what you're thinking, and I'm like, no, you don't.
Like, hey, I'm Brent Spiner,
and he introduces himself. He doesn't totally buries it like mad scientist, and then by the end of it, he ends up like, oh yeah, he is a bad guy. But because he introduces himself like. But
like the reason Dr. Soon created Data and Lore and all these androids was because he couldn't have children.
Yeah,
and so he looked at these at the androids as his children.
Oh yeah.
But then so Brent Spiner shows up and he's like, I'm Dr. Song's son. AI Song, and
Artemis Ingenious
Song,
something like that,
and he's like, my father had me the same time he was creating Data. And that's a way
that's not a thing.
And that's a way to explain like why he's like he would be Data's same age at this point, only older. And it's not clear whether or not he's like actually Song's son or if he's like another android in like a bio.
He's got to be
like a Terminator.
He's trying to transfer his consciousness into that other droid. So I feel like
how many plot lines does this show have?
He might think he's human, but like
kind of like the mom.
Yeah, but like if he was one of the first biosynthetic hybrids, because like they have to eat, they have to sleep, and do all this stuff, they might age.
I just watched that episode recently with Data's mom. Remember that where Sung made a wife and she was the first bio android. Do you remember that episode?
No,
the older lady. It's like they find out because she falls down and she like breaks an arm or something like that. But then like it knocks her out, and then Data gets the message from his dad saying she doesn't know she's an android. Please don't tell her. Let her live out her life.
Also, we got another iconic F-bomb in episode 9.
Yeah,
where the admiral, the sheer fucking hubris admiral,
F-bomb.
Admiral F-bomb does it again, strikes again.
Yeah, so like they make it a big point that she told Picard to shut the fuck up, and it was almost like something where it's like, yeah, the audience has been waiting for like 30 years to have someone tell Picard to shut the fuck up, and we're finally going to do it. And so like she does it, and you're just like, why is she telling Picard to like he's asking for the Federation's help to keep a species from being wiped out?
I think I'm going to make her my favorite.
Wait, who said that?
Admiral sheer fucking hubris.
We've been waiting to see somebody say that to Picard.
No, nobody said that, but it felt like the writers thought that. Because they made such a big deal out of building up to her saying "shut the fuck up," and you're just like, why is everyone like shitting on Picard? They're being so disrespectful to this guy, and she's got like her plastic surgery face, the actress, and like she looks perpetually surprised, like her eyes are always like super wide, and she's just like, "Shut the fuck up." And me and Matt joked that like she looks like Nancy Pelosi plastic surgery, so we call her Space Pelosi, telling Picard to shut the fuck up.
I like Admiral F-bomb.
Yeah, Admiral F-bomb.
That's a good one.
All right, we're freaking sitting on 2 hours now for this podcast. So final thoughts on Picard. That's pretty negative, right, on your end? Just
super negative. Can't wait for it to be over.
I mean, I can't help but watch it, and it's just. Yeah, it's depressing. I wouldn't even like. It's just sad and depressing. It makes me sad.
I'm looking forward to being depressed when this is over, and then to getting more depressed when Discovery season 3 starts.
I was going to wonder, like, is this somehow going to try and set up Discovery?
I very much think they're tying into each other.
So, like, Discovery is going to have to fight this android militant.
Well, they already have control. So, like, my theory is that the control is what started the AI Federation that's sending the beacon. That's kind of because they've been sent so far into the future now that time travel's involved, and it's supposed to be the most advanced form of AI, and it can basically possess humans with the nanotechnology.
Yeah. And the events of Picard could be what's setting the stage for the fall of the Federation, because when Discovery starts in season 3, they're so far into the future that the Federation doesn't exist anymore.
Well, no, it has 13 planets left in it. Is what
the downfall of the Federation.
Yeah, so and it's up to Michael Burnham to rebuild.
And it's all coming from the same production studio. What's it called?
Secret Hideout.
No, but Bad Robot. Yeah, Bad Robot's still involved. So I think they're all going to be linked. Yeah, and I'm not thrilled with it.
How long is this age of Star Trek going to take? Just give me a Pike. Captain Pike.
That's coming.
That's coming.
Is it coming?
Yeah.
It's official?
That is official. Yeah,
Finally.
so that'll be good. Mark Bernard and I spilled the beans on that on the Fat Man Beyond podcast. So.
Just make sure that we get some good writers in that one, because I really like Anson Mount.
No, he was the best part of season 2.
Absolutely.
That scene where he sees himself in the future from the cage and he still moves forward and he still he knows it
doesn't matter.
Shit's going to end bad for me, but it doesn't matter. You know? Like those are the kind of characters I like in Star Trek. That's why it's so aggravating to me that they've turned Picard into this pathetic old sad man who ended up alone and it just fucking
disgraced,
sucks, man. Yeah, disgraced, alone. Nobody cares about him. They think he's crazy. It's like
maybe
that's not how his story should have ended, man.
Maybe in season 3, Beverly Crusher will come along and they'll go live happily ever after.
I hope so. I've been watching a lot of TNG, and I watched that episode where they were linked to where they were kidnapped and they were linked together with the thing in their neck, and it came, they almost will they, won't they? And then by the end of it, Picard's like, well, now that we know these feelings, why don't we pursue them? And then she shuts him down, walks out the door, does the sign, the episode's over, and then they never pull on that thread again.
Nope.
It's like, God damn, man! I really wanted them to end up together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it would have been nice.
Yeah. But
to actually give the fans what they want.
I know, right?
Can't do that.
No.
Fuck the fans.
Can't do that.
Well, then they get a bunch of people like us bitching about it, and people will tune in. And it's like no bad, no publicity is bad publicity, or whatever.
All any publicity is good publicity.
Yeah. So.
All right, Kadish, that's a super negative on your end for Picard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm completionist, so I'm gonna keep watching this and Discovery, but I'm very disappointed with the writers of the show, in particular Michael Chabon. I expected more from him.
Well, he's leaving, isn't he?
Well, he's already left. Yeah, he's already left, but still, I was hoping that because he's such a good novelist, that this would translate to a good TV show, and it just hasn't. It's been insulting. And I think anyone who actually likes this show isn't a true Star Trek fan. I'm just going to put that out there.
Wow.
No, I would
lay the gauntlet down.
Well, I mean, I have to agree with him. This is
like if you're making excuses as to why this show is good, you don't know what good Star Trek is.
Nope. Yeah, it's not Star Trek at all. It's formulaic. It's not catering to this new negative.
You're not a real fan of the series that came before it. You're just someone who consumes and just wants more stuff to consume, and you don't bother to turn your brain on at all. And it's just like any self-respecting Star Trek fan would be insulted by this series.
I'm really curious to see, because assuming that the convention doesn't get canceled because of this stupid coronavirus thing.
I'm sure it will.
If we get to,
it's far enough out.
It's far enough.
Yeah, it's in like June or July.
August.
August. We'll be back together by then. I'm curious to see how the fandom reacts to the Picard series, because I mean, when I was there last year and they did the whole panel with the upcoming show Picard, everybody's looking forward to Picard. The place was packed. I mean, everybody wanted to see Patrick Stewart and Jonathan Frakes, and everybody was super excited to see Jerry Ryan back on stage with all of them. So it's like, I don't know. It's going to be weird. We are all going to wear that shirt.
This is the legacy of Picard.
Each have deserved better.
Right here.
Yeah.
Salt.
Totally.
Salt. About Star Trek Picard?
Well, as much as we're sighing and moaning right now, it's like, oh, God, we got to talk about Picard.
We got to talk about this.
Oh, this fucking show. Oh, Jesus.
Don't hold back, Matt. Tell us how you really
There is some nonsense going on in this show.
Well, I'm kind of pissed off at Salty right now because he didn't finish it.
I tried. I was watching the season finale while I was driving over
30 minutes left. So he can't even he's going to get spoiled by the good stuff at the very end.
Well, did you think that at any point that it was starting out strong?
I was kind of hopeful at the first episode because there were moments in it where I was like, this feels like the Captain Picard I grew up with.
There's little moments of that sprinkled out throughout this entire season. Yeah. Where you have these moments where Patrick Stewart just nails Picard.
But they're so fleeting because the stuff that doesn't feel like Picard is so much more prevalent.
Yeah.
But Alex, so like for the longest time, Matt and I were watching the show ahead of you because you had to watch it with your wife.
When she found out that I was watching episodes without her, she got mad at me.
So you've been kind of behind the curve on our discussion about it. So why don't you get caught up with us about what your thoughts are, and then we can start going into what we were thinking about.
Okay, well, season. I was dropping live comments in our direct messaging because I wanted to kind of keep track of my thoughts. But there were so many times where I was like, why is everybody so just has such disdain for Picard? Like, so often you would have these characters that would just either backtalk him or call him some kind of a fool. I mean, that one Admiral lady was like, "Shut the fuck up, Picard." I'm like,
sheer fucking hubris.
What is wrong with these people?
Admiral face.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. Like, if you're given
Admiral, shut the fuck up.
Admiral, shut the fuck up. I don't understand what the reasoning behind that was. If you have somebody as iconic as Patrick Stewart coming back, probably for the last time as Picard, you don't freaking just like throw him under the bus like that. It was just so strange to hear somebody talk to Picard like and in those manners. And then the plot itself, I was like, okay, there's something there that could be really interesting. This whole discussion about AI, I mean, it's very much like Westworld, where like, you know, what kind of AI is too much? Is it too dangerous to be kept around? Is it going to become some kind of a war between AI and organic life? These are subjects that have been around in Star Trek for a long time. So the plot of this show, I don't really have a big issue with. I just wish it was flushed out a little bit more. There's a lot of questions where I'm like, why is this happening? Like, I'm to the point now where I got the freaking orchid thing in the space. I'm like, wait, what now? 7 of 9 comes in and she rescues Picard's Romulan little like foster child. Eleanor.
Foster child.
And she hooks up to the Borg Cube. She's going to take over. She has this really badass moment. I love 7 of 9. I think she's probably one of my favorite characters, especially from Voyager. And I was really like, yeah, that was an awesome moment. And then it was immediately undercut by everybody just getting sucked out of the airlock. And she was like, no. And then there's just nothing she can do about it after that. And I'm like, well, why would you go through the effort and have this really cool, admittedly, a really cool moment for 7 of 9 to kind of like reconnect to the hive and become the Borg queen, sort of, kind of.
Because, you know, that's what 7 always wanted, was to be a Borg queen.
Well, no, see, right? She didn't want to do it. At first, she was like, no, I shouldn't do this.
She wouldn't be able to unjack.
Yeah. Which was, I thought that was a really cool character moment for her, because it made sense for her to be like, I know I can do this, but if I do, I'm worried I might not want to let it go. And I mean, it was real quick and it was a real fleeting moment, and then she just kind of did it.
But there was like no ramifications for her having done that. Like next time we see her, she's just like nothing happened.
I'm good.
Like, hey guys, here I am.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they did have a little bit of a conversation with somebody. I think it was Picard, where she was like, yeah, I felt like connected, like I've never felt connected before, or something. She said something along those lines.
But the whole thing about that episode in particular is, okay, so she's jacked into the Borg Cube. She has complete control over every aspect of that thing because she's she's rejoined the collective.
Yeah.
And the Borg Queen she is basically part of the ship. She knows she has control of every inch of that ship.
Yeah, she has eyes everywhere. Yeah.
So how are the Romulans able to open that door to suck everyone out into space without her being like, nope,
not gonna happen?
And how are they all sucked out into space without her just beaming them back on board using the teleporters from the Borg Cube?
I mean, unless the teleporters are down, this thing has been at half power or no power for centuries, apparently. So, I mean, there's reasons that you could think of, but it's definitely not explained in the show.
It had transwarp capabilities. It had the ability to like fire its weapons. I mean,
did they fire any weapons?
I have so many questions about the Borg Cube.
They didn't fire the weapons, but they were working on getting them up and running so they could protect the planet.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just there's a lot of moments in this show that could be really good, could be really interesting to kind of follow, but there's no follow through with it. Like, it almost feels like there's another half a season missing in between these episodes that would feel more like Star Trek. Like, hey, let's flush out this.
Yeah, that's a big part of the whole series. Is there's a lot of stuff that they do, but there's no reason for them doing it, and there's no follow through.
Yeah,
they just did things for no reason.
And there's very bad setup too, because it's like I'm still confused as to what the state of the Romulan Empire is.
Yep. You're still talking about that.
well, I mean, like in the final episode, they have this big Romulan armada of 200 ships.
But they're small ships, aren't they?
No, they're warbirds.
They're warbirds.
They,
I don't know. With the view screen that they had, they looked like they were smaller ships.
200 warships manned by fully crewed Romulans like show up, and you're like, wait. Okay, so first of all, they're talking about the treaty that they have with the Romulan Empire, but the treaty that they reference specifically creates the neutral zone, but they said the neutral zone no longer existed because the Romulan Empire collapsed. However, the Romulan Empire is still in effect to create treaties and work with the Federation on this science experiment on the relic. However, they don't have enough resources to help their refugees on these planets.
This is apparently a Tal Shiar fleet.
Shinjan in I think that's how you say his name, right? Tom Hardy. Shinzon from Nemesis. He destroyed the Romulan Empire, or the actual like circle of leaders, right? He killed them all.
No,
some of them.
The excuse that they gave for the collapse of the Romulan Empire was the supernova that kicked off the Star Trek 2009.
Well, what I'm saying is the state of the Empire itself, with all of its moving pieces, and the reason why it might not be quite as powerful as it once was, is because Shinzon killed a lot of the leaders.
But that was like 20 years before this movie started.
That's true.
Okay, or this series started, and basically at the start of the show, like the whole thing where Picard is trying to lead the rescue operation for the supernova. And the whole thing with the Mars shipyards getting attacked and stuff like that happens 14 years before the events of this series. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, the Romulan Empire is still kicking around, and yet this secret faction, the Zhat Vash, within the Romulan Empire, that is so worried about synthetics destroying all human life or all organic life, decides to wait for the moment where all their own people are in need of help the most to attack these synthetics so that basically they ruin their own rescue operation and doom millions of their people to not only dying in the supernova because they can't be evacuated in time, but also living on these shitty refugee worlds abandoned by their government. And you're just wondering, like, well, couldn't they have waited until after the rescue operation to blame the synthetics for some type of crime?
Yeah, the setup for the show is a little awkward for sure.
Little
awkward. I'm trying to be
awkward.
Nice. It's
quit being nice.
It's kind of like
you don't have to be nice.
It's pieced together just so that we can have a show. And
it's terrible.
I get like, oh, we have these pieces, we have this AI, we can use data because data is a huge part of Picard's life. There's a couple parts that you were talking about last week that you said you felt like Picard was so cold towards the people that love him the most. And I'm like, that kind of, in my opinion, that kind of feels more in character with Picard. Picard's always been pretty standoffish.
Picard's he doesn't like kids. He's uptight. He's very standoffish. So, he doesn't like, especially like in like first season. He's a dick.
Yeah,
he's kind of a jerk,
especially to Wesley.
Yeah. So I don't like kids.
Yeah,
get that child off my bridge.
So I see that aspect of his character in this show, and I know you were kind of complaining about it last week about him and his relationship with the Romulan kid, how he kind of just shoved him off to the side. But I'm like, that kind of leans into his character in the past, but you can tell that he's trying to work past it because he does actually tell Raffi, "Oh, I love you too, Raffi." Like he's kind of breaking those walls down a little bit.
I don't
really give a crap who Raffi is. I've never heard of her before. It should have been somebody from Next Generation.
You have to read the comic book.
Yeah, someone who didn't call him JL.
Oh god, that's so super annoying too.
So my biggest problem with Picard in his own series, he's like one of the most passive characters. Mm-hmm. He doesn't really do anything. Every time he tries to do something, someone says no and just stops him. And so, like, he's a passive character in his own series, and all the other characters are the ones doing the stuff that he should be kind of in charge of doing. And it makes it for a very boring and disjointed series. The only time he actually does anything is in the finale.
He gets pushed to the side a lot, which did irritate me. I was watching one of the episodes where they were getting ready to take off in the ship, and I think I texted you guys. You laughed at it, but I was like, Picard has this take charge moment where the Next Generation theme song kind of like swells up, and you're like, oh yeah, Picard's back. He's gonna go. He's gonna get on his mission. He had just said a line which I thought was awesome. He was like, I have a mission now, which he's been talking about in this whole show, that like, my life has been kind of wasted ever since I retired. I've been just kind of like mulling around, not doing anything. Now I have a mission, and nobody can stop me once I have a mission. And I was like, yeah, that's freaking Picard. I love that moment. And then it's immediately undercut by him sitting in the captain's chair and like bringing up the holodeck and then going, actually, I don't know how to use this. Like, why would you undercut that great moment and like subvert all of our expectations with all this cool music flowing and got all this really cool setup? You're waiting for Picard to do something awesome, and then they just like, no, he doesn't know how to do it because he's old. It's like old joke after old joke after old joke with this show, and it just kills me to see Picard.
I think it's funny that scene bugged you as much as it did.
It irritated me.
That's like the least amount of things that I had a problem with in the entire show.
I don't know. It's fresh in my mind. I think that's what
that one resonates with me because I have to have my kid set up my phone when I get a new phone. So I completely understand.
There was a scene earlier in the season where Picard kind of like sits in the captain's chair on Rios's ship, and he starts giving orders. And then he realizes that he's not the captain, and he's just like, "Oh, sorry." And he gets out of the captain's chair and lets Rios kind of take over. And then Rios literally just says everything Picard said. And that's the biggest problem with this series is that when you have a main character that a series is based around or a story is based around,
they have to be the one calling the shots.
They have to be the one in charge.
And that's the same problem Discovery had too.
I was just about to say that the problem with Discovery was that there wasn't a strong captain in charge. Both seasons, it was always Michael Burnham who was kind of calling the shots, and the captain would follow her lead. When like if that was the situation, she should have just been the captain of the ship. And I feel like Jean-Luc Picard, the character, would have been like, I'm going to get my own ship, I'm going to get my own crew, I'm going to go off on this mission, I'm going to do what needs to be done. And instead, the entire time, he's riding shotgun with all these other characters who are nowhere near as interesting as any of the next-gen characters.
A bunch of derelicts and cast-offs.
I do kind of like... No, I don't like Rios. I like his holograms more than I like him. His holograms are kind of funny. They make me laugh. They're interesting. I like they all have different accents, and I like the reveal that, like, why are you all made after his image? He's like, oh, that's just the default setting for the computer. So they just mimicked him. And I thought that was kind of funny. I was like, oh, all right, that's cool. And then the actor himself doing all those different characters and all the accents and stuff, props to him for being able to do that. That's pretty cool too. But Rios as a character, all these characters are so deeply flawed that it kind of irritates me because I'm like, I'm so used to the next generation characters who had their flaws, but they were upstanding people and people that you could kind of like look at as someone that you would want to emulate.
Well, you don't have to have a bunch of different characters with their own flaws when you can just have one character who just has his personality split up into the different holograms and they all have their own flaws themselves. So
the worst character in this entire show is Dr. Girardi.
The blonde chick?
Yeah, the drummer from Scott Pilgrim.
The murderess.
So like, first of all, she's supposed to be this brilliant cyberneticist, but she doesn't know how to work a common teleporter on the ship.
She's terrified of space travel.
She's terrified of not only space travel, but holograms. Remember when the hologram was beating her up and she was like, no, stop, please. She throws up so much in this series.
Oh my gosh, she does, doesn't she?
She does. I think we've seen more vomit in Star Trek Picard than any other show I've ever witnessed.
Bizarre.
And it's weird vomit. Like she's throwing up red bile and
it was red velvet from
red velvet bile
because she ate 4 pieces of cake.
Yeah. And
God, you rolled your eyes so hard when I said that.
And but she also kills a man that she supposedly loves. And then she says, I must pay for this. And then she never pays for it. And by the end of the season finale, she's dating Rios. And it's like, oh, they totally forgot that she murdered someone and should be held accountable.
Yeah, she murdered the love of her life 30 minutes ago. And now she's in the sack with this crazy captain.
Did that kind of came out of nowhere, didn't it? Like there was no setup whatsoever for Rios and her. That's what the show's
good at. This whole show.
No, I get it, but I'm just. Did I miss something? Because that whole love story.
No, you didn't miss anything.
Like it was out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, Rios comes in and talks to her once they get onto the AI planet. He just like starts giving her the love eyes, and I'm like, what is going on here? I don't remember.
Seven and Raffi.
Oh yeah, the very last scene of the show is they're all flying off into space on their little merry way. Raffi and Seven are sitting at the table,
and yeah, they're now
each other's hands.
They're now in a lesbian relationship.
Yeah, so now Seven and Raffi are together with no context, no setup, nothing. It is just,
never gave any indication that Raffi swung that way.
Raffi and her
literally, it's like, oh, here's your LGBT moment.
They
everybody
didn't even know each other,
did
they?
No,
they had no idea who each other was,
and there were literally no scenes of them interacting.
Not at all.
Yeah, that was the first time they did. That's the same thing with Rios and the blonde chick.
Yeah.
It was like they talked a little bit, but it was always Captain.
Well, but the thing is at least they had that. Girardi and Rios had that scene where Girardi was kind of distraught over having murdered her last lover, and so like she hooks up with him, and so like there was like some basis for them to have a relationship going forward.
Yes,
but Raffi and Seven was just literally tacked on at the end out of nowhere. Out of nowhere.
I don't like Raffi. She's probably my least favorite.
Yeah,
character.
Raffi's terrible.
One, because she comes out of nowhere. She has no context to be that close to Picard that we've ever seen. Definitely should have been somebody that he's had a relationship with.
You gotta read the comic book.
I don't give a shit about your stupid comic book.
Well, you gotta read the comic book.
but also like Raffi is bitter that she's like stuck in this basically what amounts to a trailer in the middle of the desert. And she has this class envy over Picard, and he's like in your chateau with your antique furniture and stuff like that. And it's like, you have replication technology. You could literally live anywhere in as big of a place as you wanted with as nice a furniture as you could replicate.
You can't, because she's a drug addict who left her child, abandoned her child. That's who the character is. That's what I took away from her.
Who apparently likes X-drones. So that's fine.
That's super weird because and
is an alcoholic. Oh yeah, I liked how she's a drug addict and an alcoholic, and she tells the replicator, "Hey, don't give me alcohol," and then she totally forgets, and so like she starts trying to get alcohol so she can like have another binge moment.
Pretty sure the writer forgot to.
Yeah, so, yeah. It like the story for this show is just so disjointed because it feels like, number one, they had to do a lot of reshoots on the show. And it feels like they had to cobble together certain storylines from stuff that got cut out. And none of it made any real sense. Like there's a scene in the final episode where Riker shows up with the cavalry to kind of save the day. And he has this great standoff with Commodore O,
who's on leave from Starfleet security.
Who's on
right
leave
now.
from Star, and somehow Riker knows who she is and knows like what she's been up to, even though like he literally like 30 minutes ago was like, put me back in command of Starfleet's biggest fleet, and Starfleet was like, okay.
I need 200 of these state-of-the-art ships that we don't know how they got built because all the synths got destroyed in Mars a couple years ago.
And how they got to this
14
planet
years ago.
and how they got to this planet that you can only get to with a trans-warp conduit because it's so far away within the span of like a day. But so like he shows up and he has this great, kind of heroic standoff with
very, very Picard or very Riker.
Very Riker. But like I was like, that should have been Picard's moment. That should have been like Picard leading that fleet to like, save the day. And that was also my problem with Nefene, the episode 8, I believe it was, where he goes and visits Riker and Troy on that planet, is that everything that Jonathan Frakes says to Picard in that episode felt like it should have been Picard saying to number one.
Yeah.
Like he felt like the elder. He felt like the guy who had things figured out. He felt like the guy in charge, and Picard was just kind of like his bitch boy. That
episode, was, like, I think, out of all of them, felt the most like Picard was a senile old man.
Well, yeah.
Out of all of them, because
I felt like he was a senile old man to the entire series. But
no, I'm saying that might be true. I'm just saying for me, that particular episode, it was very evident. Because they were the way they were talking to him,
they were very condescending.
Very condescending. And then that one moment where
it's like, listen, you old
Picard made like a bad joke to the android girl. What's her name again?
Soji.
And what did he say? Like, oh, you are going to kill us all or something. It's like he made like a terrible, terrible joke. And like Deanna Troi just completely obliterates him after, you're being an asshole. I'm like, why would Picard say something like that?
Yeah. Well, every show he's an asshole. Remember the episode where he like specifically picked a fight with like all those Romulans and like gets in a sword fight and then gets pissed at Elnor for saving him by killing that one Romulan
guy's head off. How dare you do that? Like, what do you expect me to do?
and then like he's like, no more killing anyone unless I tell you. And then like every time Elnor like gets involved, he's like killing people, and Picard's like fine with it. It's just like,
what was the point of Elnor again?
I don't know.
I don't get that character. He's a sidekick. He's on the ship when they leave, I guess. Ooh, here's Elnor. I got my hired sword guy.
The most interesting thing about Elnor was like the total candor thing, where like he's supposed to be someone who like can only speak the truth. Yeah. And so when you have a character who has no filter like that, and he's always saying what he thinks, you have a great playground to play with that character to make him kind of like interesting and funny and kind of like blunt and in your face. So they could have done a lot with that character that they just didn't do. Instead, they kind of played him as the scared child who had daddy issues with Picard. And there was so much that he did in the Borg Cube that didn't make any sense. Like remember when they were like executing the XBs and they had Hugh captive? It was like, where was Elnor? He stayed behind to cover their escape with Hugh.
Yeah.
Why would he let Hugh get captured? I did notice that.
And like he just straight up disappeared, and he showed up later.
The thing about this series is there's going to be so many questions generated about stuff from every episode. We could probably dedicate a daily podcast to it that would last over a year.
Probably.
For easy. It was just so poorly.
And talking about
done.
Hugh, what a meaningless death
what a waste of a character that was, right?
Like, why you bring this like classic, next generation character back and this big reveal? Oh my gosh, it's Hugh, and he gives Picard a big old hug, and then in half an hour he's dead.
We can't even talk about the really crazy shit because you haven't seen it yet. There's an alternate dimension with giant space eels, mechano space eels that are going to come and destroy all the universe.
Like Thanos with his army?
Yeah. I'm not joking.
So the big MacGuffin in the finale is that they're building this beacon to signal to the advanced synth race that they need them to come wipe out organics.
And this has happened before, right? That's why the Romulans, like they saw this happen once before, and it's been just foretold.
So what this beacon does is it actually opens a portal way up in space, and we see this advanced civilization in the form of these like robotic eels,
these
that
massively
kind of like
giant mechano
tentacles that kind of start peeking out of this portal, and they close down the portal just in time because like the eels kind of like retract.
Did you ever see Hellboy?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. That's freaking Hellboy.
Same shit, same thing.
Yeah.
But
the thing is like, okay, even if the eels can't come in through that portal, they now know that they've been signaled. So what implication does that have for the universe?
They're gonna find a way, I guess, right? They're gonna make their way there.
Yeah, and it's like a whole thing where you can kind of see where they're going with it, where like this advanced synth race is actually Control.
And you notice that they didn't actually destroy the beacon that they built.
Yeah,
but
it's still sitting down there.
If it's
what?
I'm trying to piece this all just bullshit all together, but Control is a prequel.
Control. This isn't Control.
It could be, though.
It has nothing to do with Control.
Yeah, I don't think it does, because Control was from Discovery timeline.
Control was built by the Federation.
But if you look at those tentacles,
Section 31, right?
Yeah.
If you look at those tentacles, well, Control was taken over by that AI that Discovery ran into.
Control is an out of control artificial intelligence, like on Westworld. This is a eons, hundreds of thousands of years old mechanical sentient race that comes through and destroys everything.
The futuristic version of Control that Discovery was fighting against was so advanced that it went back in time to take over Control. I don't know. It's confusing.
I don't know what you're talking about right now.
I don't know either. I don't think anybody was time traveling, were they?
No, the only time traveling done was they just went 920 years in the future.
I feel like they keep trying to recycle this same old AI trick.
It's so fucking bad we can't even keep track of it for a podcast.
But you know the worst thing about the finale of Picard was the magical bullshit device.
Oh yeah,
where basically it's this handheld.
Oh, the fix-it.
Yeah, it's this handheld replicator.
Sonic screwdriver?
Yeah, it's this handheld replicator.
The leather band
that allows you to manifest anything you can think of, and you're just like, wait a minute, what?
She uses use your imagination. Does she use it?
She does use it.
Yeah.
Okay. In the most ridiculous way possible. But
Green Lantern bad?
But it's literally like they use this technology to create this beacon. And you're just like, if you can literally create anything you can think of out of this like one little handheld device, like the possibilities for that are freaking endless. Like it's literally the Deus Ex Machina that never stopped.
It's the ultimate
Deus Ex Machina
for sure.
Yeah.
And then
at least with, like Q was kind of was kind of that, except you had to like play to his quims to get him to do stuff for you. But he was. I mean, at the end of the day, he could snap his fingers and anything could happen.
But this is far worse because it's a piece of technology that like anyone can possess.
Yeah.
And also weird. Narek, the Romulan guy.
Yeah, what happened to him?
So like he teams up with
boyfriend.
He teams up with Rafi and Rios to try to stop them from activating this beacon. And the last time we see him, he's being pinned to the floor by these synthetics, and he's begging Soji not to activate the beacon.
Yeah, that's on my list.
And that's
here.
the last time we see him. Like there is no resolution for him at all in the show. It's like they totally forgot about his character.
He's dead.
He's not dead.
They didn't kill him.
They killed him off screen.
Coming back in season 2, Narek.
They killed him off screen.
No, they didn't.
I'm speculating.
It's right here on my notes. What happened to Narek? I wrote notes for this. It's ridiculous.
What are your
more
notes?
than I did. I didn't even watch the show.
We've covered a lot of them. Let's see. Space Robot Cthulhu. Magic Hand Tool MacGuffin. We just did that. Why kill Data? Make him a hologram. Put him in a new body. His entire consciousness was there. Why would they want to die?
Yeah, Data literally said, "Kill me now.
Yeah, it's like,
please kill me."
Makes no sense to Data's scene. He doesn't know what we're talking about right now because he hasn't seen the last 30 minutes of.
Well, Brent Spiner was there.
No.
Also,
AI Soong's change of heart was kind of abrupt as well. The minute he finds out that that Tantra Sutra killed that other AI or synthetic, I should say.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, now I'm siding with your organics.
Somehow,
because he was super pro AI.
Somehow there's a thing in the compound has this 3 chips. It's Data. His entire existence are in these 3 chips.
Is in 3 chips?
It's in these 3.
His positronic brain.
Yes. All his memories, everything is in there.
Where'd they get it from?
From a single positronic neuron in the quantum realm.
This is what they use to program all the multiple whatever.
All the other datalets.
Yeah, the datalets.
Datalings.
Yeah, datalings. But after Picard dies, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, Picard dies, and
saw that coming.
And they put his consciousness, I guess, into some other chips or some shit, right? I don't know how they did that. And him and Data have a long conversation.
They put him in an incredibly complex quantum simulation.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, yeah, we Trek nerded that up really hard.
So basically, in the finale of Picard, they conquer death. They figure out a way to preserve a human's consciousness after death.
It's full on altered carbon.
And then
I'm like, this is altered carbon.
Put him in a synthetic body. But here's the funny thing. And I wish I could see your face when you would actually see this in the show, but I'm just going to spoil it for you anyway. So they recreate Picard's body, not as a younger, upgraded version, as the exact same old man version that he just died in. And they're like, yeah, you've got like a good 5-10 years left. Because like we've simulated your natural lifespan, and it's like if you're gonna do that, why not just let him stay dead? You've just dragged out his old manness for.
They gave him the same brain disease that he had.
So they put Picard in the Golem. Yeah. The Golem now is just an exact replica of Picard without the brain thing.
Yeah,
and he's got another 4 or 5 years, so we can have seasons 2 and 3 now. But going forward, it's not Picard; it's replicant Picard. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's going to be weird. He's still going to be all old and doddering and weird. And and Data's dead now because they erased his chips.
Dead, yeah.
Oh, dead. He's gone.
But, which made no sense because they should have put Data in the Golem and just made him a hologram or something.
Or used the magic bullshit device to create a ton of golems that they could just put people's brains in.
So we've conquered death. Picard's still old. Data's dead. Riker saved the day. There's Space Cthulhu in the alternate dimension. What else have I got on here?
Narek disappeared. Seven and Raffi are
Raffi and Seven are lesbos. Yeah. Why?
Jurati gets away with murder.
That was weird. Like I kind of get what they were trying to do, but the delivery was awful. They were basically trying to say that she had little to no control over herself because she was so distraught.
Androids can mind meld.
Oh yeah, androids can mind meld.
Yeah, that was dumb.
That was dumb as hell.
I'm sorry, but like only Vulcans and like a few subset creatures across the Delta Quadrant can like mind meld. Like Kess's race can do it, Tuvok, and there was like one or two others that they ran into that had telekinesis.
Are all the Borgs that are still in the cube with all the technicians and everybody that I'm assuming are still alive? Are they going to create a new like little city down there on the 8th planet thing?
Yeah. What happened to all the Federation scientists that were on the Borg Cube, and what happened to the rest of the Romulan army that was on there?
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of funny because they like crash land on the planet and the whole time they're like, nobody can survive. It's such a low odds. Like, we have to look. And they get there and they're all just chilling.
Yeah, they're all just there.
It's like, hey, what's up, guys?
Why did Picard have to captain or pilot the ship? Where was the Hollow crew?
He didn't know how to work them.
You know? I got orchids again, question mark. Okay. Space scientist murderer off scot-free? Question mark.
I like how Jurati has a hard time operating the teleporter, but she knows how to work the magical bullshit device to create thousands of
like it just kind of think about it and it'll happen, right?
And like they literally have like hundreds of her head pop up around her to illustrate the point. It's the most cartoonish thing.
Can we talk about the soccer ball bomb? How dumb was that?
So in order to try to destroy the
soccer ball bomb.
Yeah. So in order to try to destroy the beacon that the sensor building, they have to smuggle in an explosive device. And because Rios is Mexican, they put it inside a soccer ball.
Oh, the soccer ball that he was playing with.
And no one would ever suspect a Mexican with a soccer ball would have an explosive in there. And so like he smuggles it in, and then they like reveal that the inside of the soccer ball has this explosive in it at the worst possible time in the most unsubtle way possible. And of course they fail to blow it up. Like Soji picks up the explosive out of the soccer ball, throws it high in the air, and it explodes harmlessly, thus allowing her to activate the beacon and signal the demise of all organic life in the universe.
But that doesn't work either. Right. How do they close the portal again?
Through the power of love.
Cue Huey Lewis.
Yeah. So basically, Picard, in his sacrifice to try to save the planet, he flies Rios' ship up by himself with the help.
I thought he didn't know how to fly it.
He figures it out. So he flies it up to face off with these 200 Romulan warbirds. And Soji's like, Picard, what are you doing? And this is after she's activated the beacon. And so Picard gives this big moving speech that inspires Soji to be like, okay, maybe it was wrong to try to wipe out all of humanity.
Just like that?
Just like that.
God damn this show.
And she closes the portal. And she closes the portal.
The change of heart.
Now, I will say that I thought that Picard's speech to her was probably the highlight of the series.
Okay.
Because it felt like the most Star Trek-y Picard thing.
Those are the moments. Like there's little sprinkled in moments where, that's Picard.
But it was everything surrounding it that was terrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrible.
Oh, man. So what are we in store for season 2?
Who knows?
More bullshit.
I know Guinan's coming back.
Yeah,
I heard about that.
Basically, they set it up so like Picard is still alive. He's synth Picard now, but he's still the same weird old man. And he has his crew, which consists of Rios the captain, who's now in a relationship with murderer Jurati. 7 of 9, who's now in a relationship with Raffi.
Junkie.
The
child abandoner.
Junkie child abandoner.
And 7 of his she has a substance abuse problem.
Yeah, and Elnor's there.
He's just lost.
Just tagging along.
He has daddy issues.
The foster kid.
Daddy issues, foster kid,
And Soji. And that's his new crew.
He's not the captain, though.
Soji's the new Data.
He's technically not the captain, but he's like the guy in charge.
Well, yeah, but...
And it's not clear where they were going or what they were planning to do.
Going out and having adventures.
Yeah, they were just leaving this idealistic planet that conquered death and has like, bodies for everybody. And leaving it completely defenseless against the Romulans who want to come back.
Are we going to get a closer look at the origins of the Borg? Do you think they're going to go in that direction?
Who knows? God, I hope not, because I like the Borg the way they are in my head right now.
Well, I know. Yeah, the origin of the Borg.
They'll just screw them up.
It comes from the Delta Quadrant. That's already been established.
I'm sure we'll have some cameos by Michael Dorn, maybe Gates McFadden this time. We know Guinan's coming back.
Yeah.
They'll probably die.
Dr. Crusher
so,
will be back.
Yeah, they're probably going to kill off any TNG character that shows up.
Geordi maybe will show up. 7 will probably try to have a relationship with Crusher.
They may bring back.
Maybe that would be kind of cool.
They may bring back what's his name? Forget it.
All right.
We can have Wesley Crusher be the bad guy as this traveler. The traveler can like come back and put everything back together.
They might bring back Q.
Okay, so
Q would be cool, but they fuck it up.
Yeah.
They would just screw it up. So
yeah, if there's one thing we can be sure of for a second season of Picard, it's that they will continue to screw things up.
if Guinan's in it, she hates Q. So that would be kind of a cool, one-off episode.
They hate each
They could
other.
have a barbecue on some backwater jungle planet, talk to each other. And,
They might
hey,
continue,
how's it going? Have a good time.
they might continue the whole follow the Romulan Empire story. But that really fell flat in this episode. They might bring back Brent Spiner as AI Sung. Because now that he doesn't have to be young Data anymore, he's free to be old man.
I really want to see some Kling Orcs. That would be
Kling
cool.
Orcs?
Yeah.
It'd be funny if Worf showed up and he was like, look completely different.
I would be so mad. I would be so angry, dude.
Well, what's going to be interesting is seeing like what the landscape is after season 3 of Discovery, because that happens 1,000 years in the future, and we get to see like the current state of the Federation and stuff like that. And so when they come back with season 2 of Picard, it's going to be like, are they going to set up or lay the groundwork for what happens in season 3 of Discovery? Because that's what I actually thought they were going to do with this season of Picard, was lay the groundwork for what we're going to be seeing there. But again, that would require actual planning and thought.
Doesn't that start in a couple weeks?
And they
It does?
I think so. Season 3. I can't wait.
Goody.
I'm so excited.
we get to talk about that.
But Alex, what did you think of season 1 of Picard?
Well, I'm gonna watch this season finale as soon as I'm done with this podcast. I don't mind being spoiled; it's not a big deal. But there was things that I was like, man, that could be really cool if they stick the landing, and they just continually don't stick the landing for me. So that was kind of a bummer. I do like, as far as the world building goes, the new technology that they have, the ships and stuff like that. Like, I liked all that's really cool to me. Like the new holographic control panels and stuff like that. I'm like, I really like all that stuff. I like these little tiny elements of the show that kind of build the world 15, 20 years after. You don't like those things? No. Oh, I think they're cool.
You know what's funny?
It's not Star Trek.
You know what's funny about the climax of the final season of Picard is when Commander Riker leads the new Starfleet fleet to face off with the
copy
Romulans.
and paste fleet.
Literally every ship looks alike,
same.
and you can tell that they ran out of money, so they just reused the same CG asset
The copy and paste
for the entire fleet.
And they just made it smaller to make it look like it's farther away.
Well, it's just exact.
Yeah.
It's every ship is exactly the same.
They did the same thing with the Romulan ships too.
Yeah.
And
And
Warbirds with the
and originally the person leading that fleet was supposed to be Admiral Shut the Fuck Up, and when they realized how terrible of a character she was, they replaced her with Riker in the reshoots. And so Riker wasn't originally supposed to come to the rescue, but because the testing focus group didn't like Admiral Shut the Fuck Up, they replaced her with Riker, and that's why we get this great moment with Riker at the end that should have belonged to Picard. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good, guys. It's not a good show. Super bummed.
All the F-bombs. It's not for kids. So much murder.
Super bummed to have to say that, but I was trying to give it a chance. I was watching, and I was like, all right, come on, I'm trying to like find things that I like about it.
I mean, you guys know how optimistic I was about this show.
Yeah,
I kept with it far longer than Matt did. It's like, but about halfway through, I just gave up.
Yeah,
it's like I'm done. This show is just
it's
too much.
There wasn't a single episode without a murder in it, and there was only one episode that didn't have an F-bomb in it.
So edgy.
Yeah. It really honestly felt like the writers of the show were like, oh, we have to put this stuff in there because we can, as opposed to having it make any actual sense. But the thing that I hate most about this show, and this is just something that sticks in my craw, is the use of money.
Okay, here we go.
Here we go again.
Seriously, well, like the whole thing about Star Trek, they've made it canon for years. Is like they've moved beyond money, but then everything in this season of Picard revolves around money. It's about paying people to do stuff. It's about paying for material possessions and things of that nature. there's an economy here at play, and you're just like, wait, this isn't supposed to be in this world. This doesn't exist.
Just because you can have everything you want in a Federation show doesn't mean you don't need to have stuff to pay people in a non-Federation place.
But that's the reason why the Federation is able to exist, is because the society itself has conquered the economic wealth system.
Yeah,
right?
like if Picard wanted a ship, he could have gotten a ship. Like I'm not talking about like a big ship. I'm talking about like one Rios' size, because like it'd be like buying a car, but like you don't have to pay for anything in the society.
Yeah. Well, I've never seen anything in Star Trek that says that.
Yeah, because if by that rationale, then
Scotty bought a boat.
Tom Paris
boat?
Yeah.
Well, it's not a spaceship.
Well, I mean, like, it's the equivalent of a spaceship.
I don't think it is.
I don't know. There were some pretty big boats. But I mean, in this society, you can get a spaceship.
Why didn't Tom Paris just go and grab a spaceship then and fly off instead of staying on that stupid like recreational colony after getting out of jail? You guys remember that? Like, that's the whole setup for his characters. He went to like juvenile detention or whatever.
Well, it might be different for someone like him, but a formal admiral like Picard,
he would have his own yacht.
Yeah, you would think that he would have enough connections where he'd be like, I need a spaceship.
But he got fired.
But it doesn't matter if he got fired.
He resigned.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he did. He resigned.
Or resigned. It's like, okay.
Yeah, and somehow screwed Rafi by doing so.
Yeah, somehow.
Ugh, Rafi. It's got to be my least favorite character in that whole thing. Like, she does not belong there. The rest of them at least have a believable backstory. Really. Like the doctor, okay, I get it. But the Romulan kid who has an attachment to Picard, okay, he saved their race, I get it.
You know what's funny? So Bruce Maddox, kind of the MacGuffin of the beginning of this series. So he goes to Space Vegas, Freehold, is that what it was? And makes a deal with a crime lord to get enough money to build this secret lab on Flower Planet. And then, like, he realizes that the Zhat Vash are trying to assassinate him. So he leaves the planet where the Zhat Vash don't know exists or where its location is, where he's completely safe, and goes on the run throughout the universe and goes back to the crime boss that he borrowed all the money from for safety, even though he had a planetary defense system of massive flowers that could have protected him, along with an army of synths that are
an army?
I don't know.
I didn't see an army. There was like 50 people.
I just saw like 45 flower children.
Yeah, but
I did. Okay, that was a.
Hey, they had weapons and they were able to fight back against Narek and stuff. But regardless,
one good thing is the outfits that all the synthetics were wearing was very much like old school, almost original trilogy Star Trek, where you go to this planet and all the freaking skimpy clad chicks are walking around.
But regardless,
like
why did Maddox have to leave Flower Planet and go back to the
I don't think we'll
crime boss that he needed to borrow money from to build Flower Planet, even though he had the magical bullshit device that could create literally manifest anything that you could think of?
Magical bullshit.
I don't know, dude. I don't know. I'd have to sit down and like theory craft to try and even come up with an
nothing in the show makes sense. So, for instance, why did he send Soji and Daj to the Daystrom Institute and the Relic? Like, what was their actual mission there? And beyond that, why did the Romulans, who were trying to capture Soji and Daj, were they only involved in the Borg reclamation project as a way to lure them out so that they could then capture and then find out where the Flower Planet was?
Yes.
Why?
Because
show.
Get out of my head.
But they had a treaty. They had a treaty with the Federation.
Matt, you're thinking way too hard.
Yeah, dude.
None of this shit matters.
This is not going to go anywhere.
We don't know the answers, and neither do the people who made the show. So it does. It's insane.
Yeah, it's basic plot setup. Like none of the plotting in this show makes any sense at all.
I want to tell these people. Pull up my thing here. Akiva Goldsman, Michael Chabon, Kirsten Beyer, and Alex Kurtzman. Go get a new job. Go flip fucking burgers at McDonald's, because it's the only thing you're going to be good at from now on. Seriously, fuck them. I'm just salted.
Salted. Boom. And he gets up and walks away.
He drops the mic and walks away.
Drops the mic and walks away.
That's as good a place as any.
That's what Star Trek. An old school Star Trek nerd just is done. It's over, man. I don't like. I can't defend it. I try to at least find something that I enjoy about it, but I'm like, I mean, there's little bits here and there. Like, I like Patrick Stewart. He's cool. But, I mean, the show is just such a swing and a miss.
And it's surprising considering that Michael Chabon is, such a talented novelist.
Yeah, we've talked about this before.
Yeah, but if he had any influence in the show at all of his influence was terrible. It was really, really bad.
I don't know. Unless he just half-assed it for a paycheck. That's all I can think of.
Well, I think the whole thing is like he's not like respectful of Star Trek. Like he didn't care about the characters or the canon.
Didn't he say as much? Didn't he say something along those lines? Like, I'm going to piss off fans, but I don't care, or something like that. Like, why? What is this attitude coming from people?
I don't understand it.
I don't get it either.
I had to get a cookie.
I saw. I'm going to get one too. Are we done? This is 2 hours now. We can...